Chapter 1786. Qing Yu and her brother Yun Yi were living like an old married couple. Even the way they spoke was similar. Gu Nianji was already used to the way the two of them treated her. She hugged her knees and rolled her eyes. Show off to your heart's content. Luo Berry, who was sitting next to them, could not help having some weird thoughts. If she and Mo Sen could be as loving as Qing Yu and Yun Yi one day, no. What was she thinking? He was Mo Sen, one of the 4 leaders of an Hun group. They were not on the same side. She was not worthy of him at all. She had to erase such thoughts. Moreover, Luo Berry was planning to leave today. She was leaving Mo Sen's world completely. She had never loved before. It was her first time falling in love with a boy. Luo Berry thought that as long as she left Mo Sen's world completely and could never see him again, she would not think about him anymore. Both Gu Nianji and Luo Mei had their own thoughts as they watched Qing Yu and Yun Yi being lovey-dovey. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was used to it. With a small smile, she picked up the TV remote control in front of her and turned it on. As soon as the TV was turned on, the volume was turned up. A loud voice came through as soon as the TV was turned on. Grandpa, we must save Grandpa. The voice of the super-large anime Calabash Brothers rang out. Yun Jian coughed dryly when she heard that. It was obviously the video that Qing Yu was playing. It popped out as soon as the TV was turned on. Yun Jian changed the channel and watched the TV with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Luo Berry was waiting for her family's car to pick her up. Yun Jian did not ask her to stay. Qing Yu was still puzzled. She did not know that Yun Jian had sent a message to someone the moment Luo Berry decided to leave and never come back. If Qing Yu knew that Yun Jian had done that, she would probably jump up and give Yun Jian 2 thumbs up and exclaim, "You're the best." About 15 minutes later. Honk honk honk. Below Qing Yu's suite, there was the sound of car horns honking. There were very few cars in this era. Hence, she knew that the Lowberry family had sent someone to pick her up. I have to go. Yun Jian, come to our house next time. Qing Yu, Gu Nianji, brother Yun Jian, all of you must come together. Luo Berry was absent-minded, so she did not feel the cold of the night. She stood up and bowed to Yun Jian and the others with a heavy heart, then walked out of the door. Hey, wait. Let us send you off if you want to leave. Qing Yu, who was too cold to move earlier, stood up to leave. It's okay, it's a little cold outside. See you next time. Luo Berry waved at them and ran out. When Luo Berry was almost downstairs, Yun Jian suddenly led the way to the corridor of the suite and looked down at Luo Berry. Before they walked to the corridor, Yun Jian said something sinister to Qing Yu and the rest. Come out and watch the show. As she spoke, she picked up an apple from the coffee table and munched on it while admiring what was happening downstairs. Qing Yu, Gu Nianji, and Yun Yi were confused, but they followed her out anyway. Just as Luo Berry opened the car door downstairs and was about to enter, a long hand grabbed her. Luo Berry was shocked. When she turned around and saw Mo Sen, who appeared out of nowhere, she almost fell to the ground. In the end, it was Mo Sen who grabbed her waist and pulled her into his embrace. When Luo Berry realized what was happening, she quickly squirmed out of his embrace. You're leaving? Mo Sen asked softly. Luo Berry lowered her head, not daring to look at him. She was afraid that she would be reluctant to leave if she looked at him. What confused Luo Berry was that she did not even tell him that she was leaving. How did he know? I'll leave first then. You're welcome to come to my house with Yun Jian and the rest next time. Luo Berry said to Mo Sen as she waved goodbye to Yun Jian and the rest. She tried her best to make it look like she was saying goodbye to a normal person. Luo Berry was about to turn around and get into the car when Mo Sen suddenly grabbed her and dragged her to Qing Yu's house without any explanation. He even found a very lame excuse to stop her from leaving. Chapter 1787. Luo Berry's heart skipped a beat, unable to react for a long time. Was the weather very cold these few days? The weather forecast said that tonight was the only night that was exceptionally cold. After today it would be sunny for a long time. The weather forecast also said that the temperature difference in the past few days was rather large. Today was exceptionally cold and the temperature would soar from tomorrow onwards. She had to be careful to prevent heatstroke when she went out during the day. Standing by the corridor upstairs, Yun Jian munched on her apple, enjoying the view as she watched what was happening downstairs. Qing Yu, Yun Yi, and Gu Nianji's lips twitched as they almost spat out. So, you're such a person? They saw Mo Sen grabbing Luo Berry's hand and taking 2 steps toward the staircase before turning to the car that came to fetch Luo Berry home. He said something to the driver. Yun Jian and the rest then saw the car driver start the engine and leave after hearing what Mo Sen said. Not long after, Mo Sen pulled Luo Berry into Qing Yu's house. Yun Jian and the rest had already returned to Qin Yu's house. Yun Jian sat on the sofa and watched Luo Berry being pulled back by Mo Senator. She smiled and said to Luo Berry, "Welcome back." Luo Berry was still unaware of the situation. She was asked us to wait for you to Yun Jian. Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen smiled as they led Yun Jian to the car. Satisfaction was all over her face. Although she did not know what was going on, she almost jumped out of the car and pounced on Yun Jian. He really did ask her to stay. Held her down and prevented Luo Berry's thoughts from still running wild. "Don't move. Yun Jian had already looked down at her watch and got up to leave. Told Qin Sini before she left. She turned to the rest and said, "Okay, I'll leave first." Qin Sini stuck her tongue out at Zhang Xiaofeng and told Yun Jian, "Jian, my dad strode out of my grandpa's house to rest for a few days tomorrow. Yun Jian did not know what happened. Do you want to come with me for 2 days?" She was on her way to Longmen City People's Hospital. So Qin Sini had invited her. Since she came back early, it was Qin Sini who looked at her with anticipation. Letter that was delayed last time. Smiled and nodded. However, Lan Su had been taken away by Adam recently. I can go back to school in peace. He said that he was going to bring Lan Su out for 2 days. Behind in my homework. This matter was not urgent. The envelope would not run away either. Qin Sini, you have to compensate me when you're better. Qin Sini was discharged from the hospital told Yun Jian when he saw that Qin Sini was recovering well had been closed. She could no longer do strenuous and began to bicker like Qin Sini the rest of her life. This was the after effect. Idiot. Today was the day that Qin Sini would be discharged from the hospital. She would be discharged at night. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. When Yun Jian arrived at Longmen City People's Hospital, Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were already standing at the entrance. Seeing Yun Jian, Zhang Xiaofeng called Yun Jian, "Master. Has Sini been discharged?" Yun Jian nodded and asked, "She's in the car over there. Uncle is handling the discharge procedures for Sini." Chapter 1788. Jian, I need to pack my things tomorrow. We can only leave for my grandpa's house at 5 in the afternoon tomorrow. My chauffeur will send us there. You can come to my house to look for me then. After joking with Zhang Xiaofeng, Qin Sini turned to stick her tongue out at Yun Jian. Yun Jian nodded. Qin Sini's father arrived after a while. It was Yun Jian who had saved Qin Sini. Qin Sini's father thanked Yun Jian and invited Yun Jian to his house to play for a while and have dinner. Yun Jian rejected both offers. After sending Qin Sini off, Yun Jian went home first. Qin Yiru must be at home now. Gu Junjian would be home for the next few days, so Qin Yiru had already set up dinner early. Just as she reached home, Yun Jian's sensitive ears picked up a few gossipy murmurs beside her when she passed by a corner. It was not unusual for these gossipy women to gather at the intersection and murmur, but what caught Yun Jian's attention was that the person they were murmuring about was Qin Yiru. Yun Jian raised a brow and leaned against the corner of the wall without showing herself, listening to the gossipy women's murmurs from the dark. Hey, do you guys know Gu Junjian from our neighborhood? Didn't he marry a wife called Qin Yiru not long ago? Of course. When they got married, it caused a stir in Longmen City, no, the entire Zhe province. I heard that the red carpet was laid from the bride's house to the groom's house. I've talked to this Qin Yiru you guys are talking about. She's quite a nice person. What they said was just the gossipy women's murmurs. What came next was the main event. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes at that. Then, the gossipy women suddenly huddled together as if they were afraid that someone would overhear them. Their words spread like wildfire. Yun Jian's hearing was good, so she heard everything clearly. Gu Junjian is such a righteous man. He's usually very loving with his wife, Qin Yiru, but his mistress is indecent. Did you guys know that a woman came to Gu Junjian 2 days ago, saying that she was his university classmate? Now that she's divorced her husband, she's purely looking for Gu Junjian to catch up. As a woman, how can I not know what that woman is thinking? She was just thinking that Gu Junjian was rich now. Oh, he was rich, so she wanted to seduce him. You even pretended to be close to Qin Yiru and came here every day to freeload. What kind of woman to be a good woman to her to eat to? Qin Yiru of that family was kind and did not know what that woman was thinking. She's trying to seduce her husband. If this Gu Junjian was someone else, he would have probably gotten together with that woman right in front of her face. Luckily, Gu Junjian is a soldier and is an upright man. He's not seduced by that woman. But no one knows what a man is thinking. Who knows, maybe one day Gu Junjian will be seduced by that vixen. To be honest, if it were me, I would throw that woman out with a sweep of my hand. If she dares to appear in front of my man, I'll poke her **s. All these words came from the same gossipy woman. In the end, even the gossipy woman couldn't help but swear. Hidden in the dark, Yun Jian's eyes glinted sharply. She hadn't been home for a few days, so she didn't know what was going on at home. Sometimes, the gossipy woman's words weren't just gossip. After getting the gist of the situation, Yun Jian went home. The moment she opened the door, she was greeted by an unfamiliar woman instead of Qin Yiru. This woman had big breasts and a big butt, but she had a good figure. Although she was in her 40s and looked much uglier than Qin Yiru, she was younger than Qin Yiru. Chapter 1789. Gu Junjian's family was rich now. Everyone in the neighborhood knew this. Back then, Gu Junjian and his wife, Qin Yiru, had a grand wedding. A red carpet had been laid out from the bride's house to the groom's house. More than 20 super sports cars had come to welcome the bride. Among them, there were even a few flagship limited edition sports cars. Just this alone was enough to make a group of neighbors envious to death. One had to know that the neighbors in Gu Junjian's neighborhood were not poor. Gu Junjian's house was a villa, and this was a villa forest. The neighbors in the neighborhood lived in villas, so naturally they were not poor. However, compared to Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru's wedding, the neighbors in the neighborhood could not compare at all. The woman standing in front of Yun Jian was called Su Nina. The latter part of her name sounded like a foreigner's name. This was a name that Su Nina's parents gave her to show that she was an intellectual who had gone to university. Su Nina was Gu Junjian's university classmate. As they lived in the same city, they usually interacted with each other, but not much. During their university days, Gu Junjian kept a low profile. Su Nina thought that Gu Junjian's family was very poor. During their university days, Gu Junjian and Su Nina had outstanding looks. Therefore, it was inevitable that there would be some people who liked to play matchmaker or tease them to get together. Su Nina thought that Gu Junjian's family was poor, so she refused to interact with Gu Junjian. Every time she accidentally bumped into Gu Junjian and was teased by the people around her, Su Nina would be filled with dissatisfaction. She would even fly into a rage. After that, the two of them never met again. Gu Junjian only heard that Su Nina later married a rich man. Her husband was a big boss in a city and was worth millions. In this era, millions were really rich. However, Su Nina was recently forced to get a divorce by her rich husband. She did not even get a single cent and was chased out with her son. However, in front of outsiders, Su Nina still had to pretend that she was very rich and did not care about her reputation. When Su Nina came back, she occasionally heard that Gu Junjian's family had become very rich. Moreover, Gu Junjian looked valiant and heroic, which was why Su Nina's heart was moved. Especially when she heard that when Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru got married, there were more than 20 super sports cars, including the red carpet from Qin Yiru's house to Gu Junjian's house. Su Nina thought that Gu Junjian was the one who paid for all this. Gu Junjian had become so rich. Therefore she quickly came to the door. When she saw Yun Jian, Su Nina, who had just recovered from her confidence that she was younger than Qin Yiru, was instantly dealt another blow. However, Su Nina did not dare to be rude to Yun Jian, so she could only pull a long face and speak nicely to Yun Jian. The moment Yun Jian entered, she saw Su Nina's hypocritical face. Su Nina's face was covered with thick makeup, and she was no different from a nightclub princess. The perfume on her body could be smelled from more than 10 meters away. Seeing this, Yun Jian frowned. Seeing that Yun Jian was ignoring her, Su Nina's face flashed with displeasure. However, she still spoke to Yun Jian in a very intimate tone. "Little girl, you're so pretty. Tell me, what's your name? How old are you this year?" As she spoke, Su Nina turned sideways and waved at a 13 or 14-year-old boy. After the boy ran over, Su Nina blocked Yun Jian at the door and did not let her in. It was as if she was the mistress of the house. Pulling the boy, Su Nina even introduced him to Yun Jian intimately. "This is my son Su Liao. Liao, quickly greet your big sister." As she spoke, she even asked her son to call Yun Jian big sister. Su Nina was the kind of person who came uninvited and treated other people's houses as her own. She was the master of the house. Yun Jian did not even look at Su Nina. She stretched out her leg and kicked Su Nina away, walking straight into the house. Su Nina was kicked and almost lost her balance. She pulled the boy to the side and fell. After Su Nina steadied herself, she was furious. She was just about to complain to Gu Junjian. However, Yun Jian's voice was already heard. She was speaking to Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru. Chapter 1790. The reason Su Nina dared to come here so brazenly was because she was certain that Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru would not dare chase her away. After all, Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru were honest people. Usually, when someone came to their house, they would treat them with courtesy as long as they were thin-skinned. Even if the other party was overboard, they would usually tolerate them as long as they did not cross the line. Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru were more honest people, so even when Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru did not like Su Nina coming to their house, they were too embarrassed to chase her away. Therefore, when Su Nina came to their house for meals every day, Qin Yiru was too embarrassed to say anything. What Su Nina did not expect was that Yun Jian would say something like that when she wanted to use the same method to make Yun Jian feel embarrassed to chase her away. Dog-T. She actually described her as Dog-T. Xiao Jian, she's a guest. You can't say that. Qin Yiru had long disliked Su Nina, but she still had to say that in front of outsiders. As she spoke, Qin Yiru gave Yun Jian a look that said, "You're awesome. My child is young and speaks like that. Don't take it to heart," Qin Yiru quickly told Su Nina after she spoke. Su Nina, who wanted to criticize Yun Jian, was at a loss for words. Since Qin Yiru had already said that if she, Su Nina, were to say something else, would it not make her seem like she was being petty with a child? Su Nina's expression was very ugly and looked at Yun Jian. "You're not allowed to talk bad about my mom." She pretended to be kind and said to Yun Jian, "My Liao isn't good at anything except suddenly English." Bellowed at Yun Jian. "I heard that your English is getting harder and harder in high school now that you're in high school. My Liao has been learning English since he was young. You have to treat your sister like your real sister. If you don't understand, you can ask my Liao nonsense like that next time." Yun Jian sneered with confidence. Su Nina covered Su Liao's mouth and told Su Nina finished speaking. Yun Jian's phone rang. They really thought she raised her hand and saw the words displayed on the phone. When they thought about it, Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. To treat Yun Jian like his real sister. Now expanding overseas. If they understood the meaning, there was no room for further development in the country. Su Nina was going to take Qin Yiru's foreign languages later, so whenever he talked to Su Liao to call Yun Jian's sister, Yun Jian would take the call when she was free. When Su Nina said that, Su Liao immediately shut his mouth. A fluent English voice came from the other end of the phone today. "Miss Yun Jian, how English taught by the teacher at the president of Alida Company." Su Nina was angry at Yun Jian, but she couldn't show it, so she wanted to use her son's extraordinary talent to provoke Yin Jian. Although the conversation only lasted for a few seconds, cram school is too slow. English conversation was definitely not as simple as an everyday conversation. I can still say a few words to him in daily language. Her son, Su Liao was still a junior high school student. Su Nina, who had just boasted about her son, had a smug look on his face. What did she say just now? He said proudly. She said that she wanted Yin Jian to learn English from her son, but what about her hands as she said that? She was able to talk to foreigners? Su Nina was thick-skinned. After a pause, she cast aside her awkward situation and turned to look at Qin Yiru. "Io, sister-in-law, your daughter even knows foreigners?" The sarcastic tone made Qin Yiru frown. "Xiao Jian knows some foreigners and keeps in touch with them." Qin Yiru smiled politely at Su Nina even though she did not like Su Nina. At that moment, a handsome figure came down from upstairs. Upon closer look it was Gu Junjian. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Her mother, Qin Yiru, married Gu Junjian because Gu Junjian was a righteous man who would not have any contact with shady women. It was not the first time Su Nina came to visit them. Based on what the gossipy women said, it had been a while. If it was just once or twice, Su Nina was probably here to catch up. As the hosts, Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru should not chase her away. However, it was not the first time Su Nina came to visit. No matter how dumb Gu Junjian was, he should be able to tell what was going on. If he did not do anything, Yun Jian wondered if Qin Yiru marrying Gu Junjian was the right choice. "Xiao Jian, you're back? Let's go to the hotel for a feast tonight. Dad's treating a few college classmates to a gathering. Let's go together after a change of clothes." Gu Junjian told Yun Jian with a grin as he straightened his suit around himself. Gu Junjian was treating a few university classmates to a gathering today, which was why Su Nina had stayed until so late and declared that she wanted to go with Gu Junjian and Qin Yiru. It was already past 7 in the evening. The reason Gu Junjian chose this time to treat his university classmates was that some of them had to work during the day and knocked off later at night. Looking at Gu Junjian, who had changed out of his military uniform, Yun saw Su Nina's eyes sparkling. Yun Jian's gaze darkened as she went upstairs. If Gu Junjian did not handle this matter well, she would definitely leave with Qin Yiru. 3 minutes later, Yun Jian had changed into a clean white long-sleeved shirt and a pair of blue skinny jeans. The loose shirt and skinny jeans accentuated her curves to the fullest. There was a sense of freshness about her. Yun Jian was about to go downstairs when she heard Gu Junjian talking to Su Nina. Qin Yiru was listening by the side as well. However, she heard Gu Junjian say to Su Nina in a serious tone, "Su Nina, I, Gu Junjian, have always been upright. I've never betrayed anyone. I didn't say it 2 days ago because I wanted to save you some face. Today, I'll be frank with you in front of my wife. When we were in university, our classmates wanted to match us up, but I've never had any thoughts about you. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Please conduct yourself with dignity." Chapter 1792. Before Yun Jian went downstairs, she heard Gu Junjian say those words to Su Nina in a very serious tone. Gu Junjian was a soldier. Of course, he wouldn't say something as rude as, "Get out of my house," to Su Nina. However, Gu Junjian wouldn't say anything to Su Nina just because he felt embarrassed and let Su Nina wander around in front of him. He couldn't do that. Qin Yiru was thin-skinned. She was born weak and knew her place. Gu Junjian naturally understood this. However, a man married a wife to pamper and protect her. Otherwise, what was the point of having a man like him? Since Su Nina was so shameless, then he, Gu Junjian, would be the bad guy. Yun Jian, who was standing on the stairs, suddenly smiled. Indeed, it was the right decision to let Qin Yiru be with Gu Junjian. Qin Yiru, who was standing downstairs, was so touched that she couldn't say anything after hearing Gu Junjian's words. On the other hand, Su Nina, who was standing opposite Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian, froze. She didn't expect that the person who exposed her was Gu Junjian. After her face froze for a while, Su Nina looked at Gu Junjian and continued to act pitiful. "Brother Junjian, what are you talking about? How many years have we known each other? After I divorced my ex-husband, I thought that I had no one to rely on when I came back. So, I thought about how you treated people in school back then. Now that you're a soldier, I really have nowhere to go with my child. My family is chasing me away and can't wait for me to leave. I don't have a job either. I know that I'm a little thick-skinned, but if it weren't for brother Junjian and sister-in-law, I would have starved to death on the streets with my Liolio because we didn't have enough money to eat." After Su Nina heard Gu Junjian's words, she was angry with Qin Yiru. What was so good about this woman? She wasn't as young as herself. However, after hearing Gu Junjian's words, Su Nina wanted to rely on Gu Junjian even more. Not only was Gu Junjian rich, he wasn't a womanizer. TSK, if her ex-husband had even half of Gu Junjian's heart, he wouldn't have made her a nun. That bastard. Su Nina was implying that she and her son Su would die if Gu Junjian didn't let her, and Qin Yiru, she and her son Su would die. Gu Junjian frowned. This woman was really difficult to deal with. Just as Gu Junjian was about to speak again, Yun Jian's voice came from upstairs, one step ahead of him. "Then you can starve to death on the streets for me to see. If you can die, I'll be kind enough to donate money to bury your body." This voice suddenly rang out. It was a stark contrast to Su Nina's soft and weak voice, who was wiping her tears as if Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian had bullied her. Sometimes, if someone was shameless to you, why should you give them face? If they could be shameless to you, then you should let them know what the highest level of shamelessness is. Yun Jian walked down the stairs with a cold expression. She enunciated each word and uttered words that made Su Nina's expression turn uglier. When Su Nina visited Gu Junjian's house for the first time, she saw Qin Yiru. After chatting with Qin Yiru for a while, she knew that Qin Yiru was a soft and weak person. For such a person, even if she stole her man right in front of her, she could only cry in the dark, right? Therefore, when she heard that Qin Yiru had a son and a daughter, Su Nina's first thought was, Qin Yiru's son and daughter were the children of that coward ex-husband, so they probably weren't that powerful. Therefore, her daughter and son must be like Qin Yiru, soft and weak. However, at this moment, Su Nina was wrong. Yun Jian was completely different from Qin Yiru. However, this wasn't the only thing Su Nina was wrong about. "Little girl, how can you say that? If you say that, I want to kill myself." Su Nina wanted to pretend to be pitiful again. She even looked left and right for a place where she could commit suicide. Su Nina thought that Yun Jian would rush up and tell her that she was wrong because she was afraid that she would commit suicide, or that Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian would stop her. However, Su Nina was wrong. Just as she was looking for a place to pretend that she was going to commit suicide, she saw Yun Jian walk up to Su Nina. Yun Jian flipped her hand and a butterfly knife appeared. She swung the butterfly knife twice and placed it directly on Su Nina's neck. Just as Su Nina was about to take a step back in shock, Yun Jian's cold voice rang out. Chapter 1793. Never in Su Nina's wildest dreams would she have imagined that Yun Jian carried a knife with her. Moreover, Yun Jian was dressed neatly from head to toe, no different from an ordinary person. How did she hide the butterfly knife on her? Judging by Yun Jian's swift hand speed just now, she was probably not an ordinary person. Since Su Nina was Gu Junjian's university classmate, it was certain that Su Nina had studied in a military school in the past. Su Nina majored in military medicine. However, after she met her current ex-husband, she left with him and did not finish her studies. Having studied in a military school, Su Nina was well aware of how terrifying Yun Jian's technique was when she took the knife and held it against her neck. Even the male students who studied in the military academy couldn't compare to her. Hence, Sunina's legs went weak from fear. Unable to control herself, she knelt before Yun Jian. When Sunina's son, Su Liao, saw that his mother was held by Yun Jian with a knife, he did not rush over. Instead, he tore away his mother's hand that was holding Sunina and ran a dozen meters to the side, hiding in a corner in fear. He dared not come forward to save his mother. Yun Jian smirked at what she saw. Gu Junjian kept quiet on purpose. It was only when Sunina was pale and sweating that Gu Junjian held back his laughter and pretended to reprimand Yun Jian like an elder. Alright, Xiao Jian, stop fooling around. I still have to treat a few university classmates to dinner later. It was obviously unrealistic to kill Sunina. This was a lawful society after all. Gu Junjian could tell that Yun Jian was just scaring Sunina. After all, a woman like Sunina would probably come to his house again if he did not scare her. Hearing what Gu Junjian said, Yun Jian kept the butterfly knife with a smirk and kicked Sunina's abdomen, sending Sunina to the floor. For my dad's sake, I won't spend the money on a coffin. Yun Jian turned around nonchalantly, her long hair brushing Sunina's face, stunning Sunina for a long time. My daughter studies in the military school. She looks just like a boy. You've studied in the military school too, so you know that we soldiers have stronger hands. Haha, don't take it offense. Gu Junjian held Qin Yiru's hand and stood more than 10 meters away from Sunina, showing no intention of going over to help Sunina. Moreover, he was holding Qin Yiru's hand. If Qin Yiru did not go over to help Sunina, Sunina would be too embarrassed to say anything. The back and forth had infuriated Sunina so much that she was about to have a heart attack. In spite of it, Sunina was at a loss for words. Even her son, Su Liao, had stayed far away just now. 20 minutes later, the group walked from Gu Yunjian's house to Xanjia Hotel. It had been 3 to 4 years since Xanjia Hotel opened in Longmen City. It was well received and popular. That was because Xanjia Hotel's taste buds were obvious from its name. It was geared toward the masses and tasted similar to the local dishes cooked by ordinary people in Longmen City. Big bosses liked to set up their gatherings here as well. Since it was not particularly expensive, people would usually treat them to a meal. Those who were more extravagant would set up their gatherings here as well. Xanjia Hotel's decor was quite nice. Just as Yun Jian and Gu Junjian entered, they saw a group of men and women who were about the same age as Gu Junjian standing nearby. These men and women who were about the same age as Gu Junjian must be Gu Junjian's university classmates. These middle-aged men and women who were about the same age as Gu Junjian were accompanied by young men and girls who were about the same age as Yun Jian. These people were obviously the children of Gu Junjian's university classmates. For a large gathering like this, many parents would bring their children along. It was especially so in 1999 when the people's standard of living was still not high. Usually, when there was a gathering and someone was treating, the whole family would be present. After all, meat was only a few times a year back then. It was unlike now where they could eat meat whenever they wanted. Were their families unable to survive? They would starve to death. As Gu Junjian was the one who was treating today, a large group of people were waiting outside. When they saw Gu Junjian, the large group of people crowded around him. Our officer Gu is here. Ah, Junjian, it's been a few years since we last met. How have you been? A big-bellied man rubbed his beer belly and asked Gu Junjian courteously. Chapter 1794. When everyone was seated around the 2 tables, the dishes were served. Gu Junjian ordered 2 tables of dishes. Since his university classmates had invited their entire families, 1 table was definitely not enough to seat all of them. Of course, in this era when there was a gathering, the entire family would be brought over for a free meal. Gu Junjian had already expected this, so the dining table was naturally prepared in advance. There were only a few seats left. After everyone sat down, Gu Junjian looked around. Seeing that no one was present yet, he asked, "What's the matter? Where's old Zhang? Why don't I see him?" Yun Jian was sitting next to Qin Yiru. She could feel that many women and young girls were staring at her with burning eyes. Old Zhang went to pick up his son from class. He'll be here in a while. The man with the beer belly who greeted Gu Junjian just now said to Gu Junjian. None of the middle-aged men, especially those who were big bosses, could escape the fate of having a beer belly. This was simply because their lives were too comfortable. Okay. Gu Junjian nodded. Usually in such a gathering, the men would sit at one table and the women would sit at another. Today was no exception. Yun Jian was sitting with Qin Yiru. Sunina was sitting opposite Yun Jian and Qin Yiru. Your Officer Ji's wife? Just when the atmosphere was a little awkward, a woman looked at Qin Yiru and asked. Qin Yiru nodded very politely and answered. You and Officer Gu are both married twice, right? Officer Gu had many suitors in our university back then. You're lucky to be able to marry him twice. The woman looked at Qin Yiru and said with a smile. After saying this, the woman turned to look at Yun Jian and changed the topic to Yun Jian. Then this must be the daughter of you and your ex-husband, right? You're pretty but you look a little weak and gentle. Officer Gu is a soldier. You and your mother look weak and gentle, haha. Officer Gu is protecting him. This woman spoke in a strange tone. It was unclear whether she was praising Yun Jian and Qin Yiru or secretly mocking them. But everyone around could hear one thing. Gu Junjian was indeed powerful, but Yun Jian and Qin Yiru were both skinny and weak. Hearing the woman's words, Su Nina's body trembled. She didn't know why she was trembling when she heard these words. The woman's name was Wang Defang. Wang Defang wasn't Gu Yunjian's university classmate. She was the wife of Gu Yunjian's university classmate. She had brought her daughter along for a free meal today. After Wang Defang finished speaking, she picked up a huge piece of pork trotter and placed it in her daughter's bowl. Then she instructed her daughter, who weighed at least 160 kilograms, "Don't worry about it. When eat meat. Eat more solid food. Your father is a soldier. You have to make your father proud." At least she couldn't be like Yun Jian, who looked weak and gentle. Gu Yunjian's university classmates were all military students. The women were military doctors. Wang Defang's husband was Gu Yunjian's university classmate. Naturally, he was also a soldier. However, Wang Defang's husband wasn't as powerful as Gu Junjian. His military rank wasn't as high as Gu Yunjian's either. Therefore Wang Defang was envious. "Mom, I defeated a boy at the martial arts school last time." Zhu Wen looked at her mother, Wang Defang, proudly. She bit the pork trotter and tore it apart. "Wow, Arwen is so powerful. You will inherit your father's skills in the future." When Wang Defang heard this, she reached out and patted her daughter's 160 kilograms body. Then she glanced at Yun Jian and Qin Yiru proudly. "I'm sorry we're late." At this moment, a man dressed in formal clothes walked in. There was another person standing next to him. It was obvious that he was the man's son. "You're not late at all. Bring your son to a seat. We've already eaten for a while." Gu Junjian laughed and waved at the man. The man's son glanced around lazily. However, under everyone's gaze, it was as if he had suddenly seen an important person. He walked towards Yun Jian and shouted, "Grandmaster! Grandmaster, you're here." The man's son was none other than Zhang Xiaofeng's disciple, Zhang Jian. He was the silly fatty nicknamed Little Fatty. Chapter 1795. Zhang Xiaofeng had been hanging around Yun Jian recently, but Yun Jian had not seen Zhang Xiaofeng's disciple, Zhang Jian, for a long time. Zhang Jian was Zhang Xiaofeng's disciple and also the little fatty in Yun Jian's junior high class. He had a dispute with Zhang Xiaofeng in the beginning, but after being defeated by Zhang Xiaofeng, he turned around and became Zhang Xiaofeng's disciple. Zhang Jian had been studying in another province and it was rare for him to come back, so it had been a long time since he met Zhang Xiaofeng and Yun Jian. He came today reluctantly, intending to meet up with Yun Jian and Zhang Xiaofeng, but did not expect to be dragged to such a meal by his father. However, Zhang Jian did not expect to see his grandmaster here. Therefore, Zhang Jian's dissatisfaction was suddenly filled up, and he skipped to Yun Jian in front of everyone. What's going on? Even Zhang Jian's father was dumbfounded. Not to mention Wang Defeng, who had called Yun Jian weak. Wang Defeng was completely stunned. Dad, this is the person I told you about the last time, my grandmaster. My master's master. Team Monarch slashing God. My grandmaster is amazing. Zhang Jian turned to introduce Yun Jian to his father in front of everyone. With this introduction, the surrounding people were shocked silly. Gu Yunjian's university classmates were all military graduates. The men were mostly soldiers while the women were military doctors. Team Monarch slashing God. Most of them had heard of this title before. What? She's Team Monarch slashing God. Junjian, oh Junjian. Your daughter is Team Monarch slashing God. This sounds too awesome. A man stood up from his seat in shock and looked at Yun Jian. He walked over and put his arm around Gu Yunjian's shoulder as he exclaimed. The cheers of Gu Junjian and the other university students could be heard all around. Seeing this, Wang Defeng, Zhu Wen and the shameless Su Nina blinked. They weren't very surprised, but they were still shocked. Wang Defeng and Zhu Wen did not even know what Team Monarch was. This storm passed very quickly. During the meal, everyone ate with their own thoughts. Among them, Wang Defeng and Zhu Wen's expressions were particularly bad, and so was Su Nina. The new residence was located in Nanlin Road, a relatively remote area of Longmen City. Although there were shops around, the wide road was deserted. It was a stark contrast to the bustling city center where people came and went. After paying the bill, Gu Junjian suddenly received a phone call when he walked out of the Xinjia Hotel. Old Gu, you said you're treating at the new residence 2 days ago. Are you still at Nanlin Road now? An anxious voice came from the other end of the phone. I'm here, Gu Junjian replied. Quick. There's an international criminal fleeing from Longmen City in a gray Bugatti Veyron from Nanlin Road. He killed a wealthy businessman in Longmen City. You must stop him. The troops will arrive at the intersection in 10 minutes. You just have to stop him for 10 minutes. An anxious voice came from the other end. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Just as the people around them shuddered in fear when they heard the voice, she saw a familiar figure not far away. Was Qingyu. Qingyu walked to Yun Jian in front of Wang Defeng, Zhu Wen, and the others before handing a piece of information to Yun Jian. Sister Jian, an international criminal, will pass by here later. 2 weeks ago he stole a treasure from our organization. It's worth 5 billion yuan. Yun Jian's squinted eyes relaxed when she heard that. The people around them were baffled by what Qingyu told Yun Jian. Just as they were bewildered, Yun Jian asked for a Beretta 92 FS pistol from Qingyu right in front of them and walked to Qingyu's sports car not far away, leaving her flowing hair behind. She turned to look at Qingyu in front of everyone and opened the door with one foot in the sports car. She spoke to Qingyu with a cold expression like a cold-blooded killer. You're right. Chapter 1796. Qingyu did not mention what treasure the international criminal had stolen from the kosher mercenaries, but she emphasized 5 billion. It was not appropriate to mention the treasure in front of everyone as it would cause a commotion. The treasure was a necklace named Eternal. The material of the necklace was unique as it was made of pure natural crystals. After processing, it was made into a necklace that was priceless in the market. It was not an exaggeration to say that the necklace could nourish one's body and mind when worn. It could also prevent some illnesses and even prolong one's life. It was especially suitable for middle-aged people to wear, and Yun Jian had planned to give it to Qin Yiru. The international criminal did not have the ability to steal the necklace named Eternal from the kosher mercenaries. Yun Jian had sent the Eternal necklace to the factory for the most precise processing. The necklace itself was very valuable, and if anyone saw it, it would attract a lot of people to fight for it. It might even bring danger to Qin Yiru's life if it was given to Qin Yiru. Therefore Yun Jian had sent the necklace for processing. After the processing, the necklace looked no different from a normal necklace on the surface. However, they did not expect it to be stolen right after the processing was completed and before it could be taken out of the factory. When Qingyu mentioned that the criminal had stolen the organization's treasure and emphasized that it was worth 5 billion, she was indirectly telling Yun Jian that the necklace for Qin Yiru had been stolen. The kosher mercenaries did not lack other treasures and Yun Jian did not need them. However, Yun Jian had her eyes on this item and had planned to give it to Qin Yiru. Naturally, she could not watch it be stolen by the international criminal. Yes. Qingyu nodded and walked over obediently. She walked around Yun Jian to get into her sports car and started the engine. Just as Yun Jian was about to turn around and sit in the front passenger seat, Gu Junjian came over in time. Sit in my car, I'll drive. My car is high so I can take action after catching up to that car. It was easy for a sports car to chase after a car, but if one wanted to use a sniper rifle to snipe the tires of the car in front, the hit rate would be much higher. Gu Junjian got Yun Jian out of Qing Yu's sports car without hesitation. She retrieved a sniper rifle from Qing Yu's car and followed Gu Junjian to the jeep. Wang Defang and her daughter Zhu Wen as well as Su Nina, who had shamelessly stayed at Gu Yunjian's house to freeload meals for several days, all had a change in expression. Junjian, we have to go on such a dangerous mission. How can we let you and your daughter be in danger? Gu Yunjian's university classmates were all soldiers. Naturally they were very upright. They all rushed to Gu Yunjian's jeep. Yo, Officer Ji's daughter, why are you joining in the fun? Do you think that adults are not troublesome enough? This is not child's play. Are you trying to drag the adults down with you? Seeing that her husband was tagging along, she knew that this was dangerous. The other party was an international criminal. Wang Defang, who had called Yun Jian weak earlier, yelled at Yun Jian again. Initially Wang Defang was too lazy to care about Yun Jian, but her husband was tagging along. What if something happened to her husband because of Yun Jian? Wang Defang dared not imagine it. Officer Ji's wife. Your daughter's tagging along. Isn't she causing trouble for them? She hasn't graduated from the military school yet. Why is she in such a hurry to show off? Why doesn't she go to school to show off? Why must she join in the fun? Does she really think she's something? Wang Defang panicked when she saw that Yun Jian had gotten into the jeep. She turned to yell at Qin Yiru. Qin Yiru ignored Wang Defang and merely smiled. Qin Yiru knew about Yun Jian's identity, but she was thinking that it would be dangerous if her daughter did not tag along. Before Gu Junjian drove the car away, Yun Jian left Qin Yu a message. Chapter 1797. After Yun Jian asked Qin Yu to stay behind to protect Qin Yiru, the jeep sped away at lightning speed. Gu Yunjian's jeep had 3 rows of seats. The driver's seat and the passenger's seat could fit 2 people, the left and right seats in the second row could fit 2 people, and the last row could fit 3 people if they squeezed together. There was a total of 7 people. Yun Jian was sitting in the second seat by the window while Gu Junjian was driving. Other than Yun Jian, there were 5 of Gu Yunjian's university classmates who got into the car. When the jeep sped away, Wang Defang's cursing could still be heard in the wind. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She left Qing Yu where she was, so she was not afraid that Wang Defang would do anything to her mother. I've calculated. The gray Bugatti Veyron should be here soon. Junjian, turn the car to the main road. We'll be able to track it if we keep an eye out there. The middle-aged man who sat next to Gu Junjian was Yu Chaoning. Among the group, he was the one who was doing the best other than Gu Junjian. Yu Chaoning lowered his head to look at the watch on his wrist as he spoke seriously. There were a few intersections in Nanlin Road. No one could guess which one the international criminal would escape from. If they missed the international criminal, Gu Yunjian's mission would be considered a failure. However, there was a main road in Nanlin Road. They would have to pass through that main road if they wanted to pass through these intersections. Yu Chaoning was amazing. He could calculate the time and roughly predict when the international criminal would arrive. He asked everyone to keep an eye out at the main road so that they could chase after the car once it left. After Yu Chaoning finished his words, the people around him started searching. Super, you're really good at this. We'll depend on you to find the international criminal's grey Bugatti Veyron. Thank goodness you're here. Super, you're really a super. If this international criminal escapes from right under our noses today, do you still want our old faces? Gu Yunjian's university classmates chatted with each other as they searched for vehicles passing by. When going out on a mission, the scariest thing was not being able to find the target. To put it bluntly, if you can't even find your target, what kind of mission is this? Might as well go home and stay there. In any case, you won't even have the luck to meet the target. It was as if you suddenly wanted to go to the toilet or take a dump, but you couldn't even find a latrine. How could you find a latrine to take a dump? At this time, it was crucial to have someone with quick reflexes to lead everyone to the correct location to find the target. Just as everyone was looking for a target and praising Yu Chaoning to the extreme, a delicate female voice that was even more pleasant than a singer's rang out, startling everyone present. Drive the car to the third intersection. You will definitely pass by the third intersection. Even Yu Chaoning, who had a very accurate estimation, didn't dare to make a conclusion on which intersection on Nanlin Road the international criminal would take. Hence, he asked Gu Junjian to drive the car to the main intersection and wait there. No one present had any intention of looking down on Yunjian. However, how could Yunjian be so sure that the international criminal would escape from the third intersection? Why would he definitely pass by the third intersection? If we stop the car in the wrong direction, we'll miss him. If we stop the car at the main intersection, even if we discover that his car is further away from us, we can still chase after him. A middle-aged man looked around and asked Yunjian in a serious tone. This was a mission. It wasn't child's play. He will definitely take the third intersection. Yunjian pursed her lips and repeated. Chapter 1798. In response to Yunjian's insistence, the man remained silent for 2 seconds and did not respond to her. Yunjian was Team Monarch/God. She was not as simple as she looked. However, at that moment, time was money. If Yunjian was wrong, she would be letting an international fugitive escape. She couldn't bear the consequences of her actions. What should we do? Should we listen to her? An honest-looking man sitting in the last row paused for 2 seconds before asking. No. This mission is not a game. We'd rather chase after the grey Bugatti Veyron than take the risk. Moreover, the third intersection is quite a distance away from where we are now. Who's going to bear the responsibility if we make a mistake? I know you're Team Monarch/God and I don't mean to belittle you, but at this juncture we can't afford to make any mistakes. The man who asked Yunjian the reason earlier did not hear Yunjian's explanation, so he insisted on his opinion calmly. That's right. Even if the car really passes by the third intersection, let's just wait at the main intersection for safety's sake. What if he doesn't pass by there? Yes, we agree with Yongheng. The rest of the middle-aged men, except for the honest man, unanimously agreed with this man's statement. The middle-aged man who refuted Yunjian was called Kai Yongheng. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and said nothing. Instead, she said to Gu Junjian, Dad, let's switch seats. I'll drive. Since they did not believe her, she would wait and see. Even if they were to chase after the Bugatti Veyron at the third intersection, it would not be a problem for her. You'll drive? Do you have a driver's license? The man named Kai Yongheng asked again. It was obvious that this man named Kai Yongheng was very old-fashioned. Just as Kai Yongheng finished his sentence, the honest man sitting in the third row suddenly pointed into the distance and exclaimed, That grey Bugatti Veyron. Grey Bugatti Veyron, that's the one. I can't be wrong. They saw a grey Bugatti Veyron speeding toward them from afar. It was heading toward the second intersection. It's heading towards the second intersection. Army construction, start the car. Kai Yongheng was excited. The second intersection wasn't particularly far from here, but it wasn't particularly close either. He could still force himself to keep up. They saw the grey Bugatti Veyron make a big turn at the intersection. Just when everyone thought it was going to the second intersection, it suddenly narrowed the curve and slipped into the third intersection. It really went to the third intersection? Did that mean that Yunjian was right? Kai Yongheng's face stiffened and he didn't react for a long time. The distance from here was not short at all. Moreover, it was very likely that they would lose the car. Kai Yongheng and everyone else regretted that they had stopped Yunjian from speaking. At this moment, Yunjian had quickly swapped seats with Gu Junjian. She sat in the driver's seat, started the engine, released the clutch, and stepped on the accelerator. The car rushed out in a single file and chased after the grey Bugatti Veyron. The few people sitting in the car leaned forward fiercely. They grabbed the armrest as fast as they could and stared at Yun Jian driving. It would take some time to drive from here to the third intersection. By that time, the gray Bugatti Veyron would have already bypassed the street at the third intersection and turned into another intersection. Although this wasn't the downtown area, a car driving on the road would disappear in a few seconds. You wouldn't even know where it had driven to. Yun Jian led everyone around a few intersections at the fastest speed. Every time they passed by an intersection, they would move as fast as lightning. Moreover, every time they were about to hit someone's house, they would move forward fiercely. Everyone in the car was so scared that their faces turned pale. That car has already disappeared. Can you really find it? Can you really find it? Just as Kai Yonghen finished speaking, Yun Jian had already led everyone to a deserted and flat road. They saw that gray Bugatti Veyron was speeding ahead of them more than 10 meters away. It has already left you behind. How can you still find it? Moreover, it wasn't the first time that she had calculated so accurately. Kai Yonghen's eyes widened in shock as he asked Yun Jian. Yun Jian's smirk was reflected in the rearview mirror as she suddenly stepped on the accelerator and uttered something that left everyone dumbfounded. I'm not going to let you go, but I'm going to let you go. Chapter 1799. There was a certain degree of arrogance in Yun Jian's words, but it made everyone gasp at her words. If Yun Jian had said that earlier, they would have thought that she was boasting. However, judging from the accuracy of Yun Jian's guess, including how she drove the jeep at lightning speed to catch up with the gray Bugatti Veyron that they had lost, everyone believed Yun Jian completely. Since she dared to say such words, she definitely had the confidence to back it up. Team Monarch/God was no ordinary person. They had thought of it before, but never had they expected Yun Jian to be so capable. This ability made everyone at the scene go crazy. While they were still in shock, Yun Jian gestured to Gu Junjian. As the jeep drove, she switched seats with Gu Junjian. Hold the steering wheel tight and don't let go of the accelerator. It's noticed that we're tailing it. The border of Longmen City isn't far away. If we leave Longmen City, the troops won't be able to make it here and your mission will be considered a failure. Yun Jian never called Gu Junjian dad when they were on a mission. Okay. Gu Junjian was very cooperative. What about you? Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning, and the others asked Yun Jian in unison when they saw that Yun Jian had arranged for Gu Junjian to drive. Yun Jian, who stood in front of them, smirked and said, "That's right. See the red Porsche sports car in front of the gray Bugatti Veyron?" Yun Jian asked. Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning, and the others turned to look ahead. In front of the gray Bugatti Veyron, a red Porsche sports car and the gray Bugatti Veyron were driving on the highway one after the other. The gray Bugatti Veyron was at the back. These two cars? Kai Yonghen was cut off by Yun Jian just as he spoke. The information was wrong. The international criminal you want to catch and the thing I want to take back are both in the red Porsche sports car in front of the gray Bugatti Veyron. The gray Bugatti Veyron in the back, if I'm not wrong, was just a cover from the beginning. The people sitting inside are at most the subordinates of the international criminal sitting in the red Porsche sports car. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was not in a hurry to make a move. It was not the right time yet. She returned to her original seat and spoke to the people around her. What's the meaning of this? The surrounding men all stared blankly at Yun Jian. What did that mean? Just when everyone thought that the person sitting in the gray Bugatti Veyron was the international criminal, Yun Jian suddenly said that the international criminal was not in the Bugatti Veyron, but in the red Porsche sports car. Just as everyone was puzzled, Yun Jian continued with a smile. Sniping the gray Bugatti Veyron with a sniper rifle won't work anymore. If we try to snipe it forcefully, the gray Bugatti Veyron will come crashing down on us and the red Porsche sports car will be able to escape right under our noses. So we mustn't fire. Realization dawned on everyone when they heard what Yun Jian said, but it was followed by a moment of bewilderment. The international criminal was indeed an international criminal. If it were not for Yun Jian today, he would definitely be able to escape from Longmen City with his cunning. While the group was exclaiming, they did not forget to gasp. Yun Jian was really something. What should we do then? At this speed, it's impossible to overtake. Are we going to keep chasing the red Porsche? Kai Yonghen asked with a frown. Those who kept shouting, "What should we do? What should we do?" were the most useless people. Chase after the gray Bugatti Veyron as fast as you can, Yun Jian suddenly told Gu Junjian with a frown. With Yun Jian's order, Gu Junjian stepped on the accelerator and chased after the gray Bugatti Veyron. Soon the three cars were side by side, one after the other. The one at the front was the red Porsche. The second was the gray Bugatti Veyron. The third was Gu Junjian's Jeep. Yun Jian was in the third car while the international criminal was in the first car. Yun Jian suddenly pulled open the side door beside her and a strong gust of wind blew into the car. Seeing Yun Jian standing up, Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning and everyone else stared at her with widened eyes in horror. Kai Yonghen in particular, asked Yun Jian fearfully in front of everyone. Chapter 1800. If you could be like me, risking your life for survival and victory in every mission, you wouldn't be the coward you are today, Yun Jian suddenly said to Kai Yonghen as she stood up. The meaning behind her words was profound at first, but after listening closely, one could understand what Yun Jian was trying to say. Sometimes, gambling with one's life might not necessarily result in one losing one's life. On the contrary, those who were so worried that they did not dare to step forward would die the earliest. Whether it was Yun Jian who was slaying God in her past life or Yun Jian after her rebirth, she had always found a way out for herself in a hopeless situation. This was because she had always believed in one thing. She might not be as good as many people, but when she was forced to a dead end and was forced to take another step back, there was a bottomless abyss below her. She would then cut off all thoughts of retreating. She would then unleash a strength that exceeded her own instincts and become the best of the best. Yun Jian's words gave Kai Yonghen and the group of men a lot of motivation. This was something that even a teenage girl like her could do, yet they were afraid of it again and again. Just when Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning and the rest were stunned by Yun Jian's words, Yun Jian had already grabbed the handrail in the car and jumped out of the car. Even if an ordinary person wanted to jump out of a car, they would prepare for half a day, just like how they would hesitate for half a day before jumping out of a long jump. However, Yun Jian did not hesitate at all. She did not care if she succeeded or not, she grabbed the handrail and jumped out of the car. And at this moment, the scene that made everyone present so shocked that it was as if they had stopped breathing was the most exciting and blood-boiling scene that they had ever seen in their entire lives. They saw Yun Jian, who had jumped out of the car, grab the handrail. Even though the car was speeding, she did a flip at the speed of 1 second and threw herself onto the car roof. The people in the car did not even hear the sound from the car roof. However, they knew that Yun Jian did not miss. That meant that Yun Jian was definitely on the car roof. When an ordinary person jumped from one place to another, there would definitely be a loud bang. However, when Yun Jian jumped onto the car roof, she controlled her strength so lightly that there was no sound at all. This scene caused everyone present to be so shocked that their faces turned pale. That was too amazing. What she did was not something that could be done by an ordinary person. However, that was not the most shocking part. In less than 3 seconds, a petite figure appeared in front of the driver's seat's glass. Yun Jian took 2 consecutive leaps and arrived in front of the red Porsche in a flash. In the blink of an eye, she had jumped from the third car to the first car at a speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour, despite the fact that she had not been thrown out of the car at all. That girl is too terrifying. I've never seen such a terrifying person. This frightening thinking ability and her nimble movements. Could she be some international big shot? One of the men exclaimed. As soon as the exclamation ended, the first red Porsche suddenly turned to the side and braked in front of everyone. Seeing this, Gu Junjian immediately turned around. The gray Bugatti Veyron also stopped. When Gu Junjian stopped the car and everyone got out, they saw that Yun Jian had already forced the red Porsche to stop. Then she pulled out a figure from the driver's seat. The owner of the figure was a man in his 40s. The man was holding a box in his arms. It was Yun Jian's necklace. Yun Jian stepped on the head of the man who had fallen to the ground in front of everyone and sneered at the man. Chapter 1801. Yun Jian had spoken in Portuguese instead of Mandarin. The people present had limited exposure to languages, so naturally they could not understand what Yun Jian was saying. However, the man who was being held down by Yun Jian could understand. Since the man was an assassin, he must have been trained and learned many languages. Perhaps the man knew fewer languages than Yun Jian, but the Portuguese that Yun Jian used was definitely something that the man knew. Since there were quite a number of people who spoke Portuguese around the world, there was a high proportion of them who received missions there. Naturally, it was one of the languages that they had to learn. As expected, the man's face darkened as soon as Yun Jian finished her sentence. From afar, Gu Junjian, Yu Chaoning and Kai Yonghen could clearly see the man's complexion change at lightning speed. His face, which had a trace of blood, suddenly turned pale. If you dare reveal my identity in public, it won't be as simple as death. Just as Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning and the rest were shocked by what Yun Jian had said, Yun Jian spoke again. She continued speaking to the man in fluent Portuguese. Even if the man was caught by the police, he would definitely die as an international criminal. He must have known that as an international assassin or secret agent, there was only one outcome for being caught or failing a mission: death. Yun Jian was not stupid. Since she dared to reveal her identity to this international criminal, she knew that he would not reveal it. Yun Jian's words earlier were a warning to the man that if he dared to spout nonsense, it would not be as simple as death. She had 1,000 ways to make people experience that the most painful thing in the world was not death, but living a life worse than death. The feeling of being tortured to death was excruciating pain that came from the depths of one's soul. Slaying God was known for her ruthlessness in the underworld. Not only was she powerful, but more importantly, she was cruel and ruthless. The way she dealt with people who were in the same profession was terrifying. Brainwashed killers referred to killers who had been brainwashed. Such people did not have their own emotions and thoughts. They only knew how to do things according to their masters. Even if they were caught, no one could get anything out of them because they only listened to their masters. However, the way Slaying God dealt with people back then had once made the brainwashed assassin, who was known to have the strongest willpower in the world, beg for death. In the end, he gave up the mastermind. Of course, the man believed that Yun Jian had the ability to capture him from the police and make him suffer a fate worse than death. A fate worse than death. Therefore, the man would rather be caught and executed by the police than reveal Yun Jian's identity. No one knew what Yun Jian said in the language of the country, but everyone could clearly see the man's body tremble slightly. As a grown man, his head was stepped on by Yun Jian. Not only did he not feel humiliated, but he was so scared that his whole body trembled. Whether it was Gu Junjian, Kai Yonghen or Yu Chaoning, all of them were dumbfounded at this moment. It wasn't the first time they had caught such a felon. Not to mention that the man in front of them was an international felon. Even if it was an ordinary felon, when they were about to be caught by the police, they would take the last resort to ask for help to fight for a chance to escape. No one would want to give up hope of survival. But what did they see? Why was this international criminal, this man, running away so vigorously just now? He looked like he would rather die than submit. Now that Yun Jian was stepping on his head with her foot, he did not feel humiliated at all. Instead, he was trembling all over. Was he afraid of Yun Jian? What? Was it because of what Yun Jian said in the language of the country? Kai Yonghen could not hold back his words. He walked up to Yun Jian in front of everyone and looked at her. Chapter 1802. At this moment, Yun Jian's foot was still on the man's head. She lowered her head slightly and looked at the man coldly. When she heard Kai Yonghen's words, she raised her head slightly and glanced at Kai Yonghen and the people around him. Do you want to know what I said to him? Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and looked at Kai Yonghen with a strange smile. Kai Yonghen took a deep breath for no reason. He took a deep breath and nodded at Yun Jian. He was curious, not just curious. From when Yun Jian guessed which path the international criminal would take, to when they lost track of the international criminal, Yun Jian could still figure out every path the international criminal would take. Then she caught up with him and jumped out of the car. At this moment she said something that made the international criminal so scared. Originally, Gu Yunjian's mission was to delay the international criminal for 10 minutes, and the military would immediately bring people over to arrest him. Even Kai Yonghen, Yu Chaoning, and the others were not confident that they could delay the international criminal for 10 minutes. However, Yun Jian was good. The international criminal, a 2S international criminal, was so fast that the naked eye couldn't see her clearly. Not only did she stop conversation with Kai Yonghen earlier was to let the international criminals was that the other party did not even dare to say a word. Find the right opportunity to attack her. Do you really want to know what I said to him just now? She stepped on the man's head and slid it twice like she was stepping on a soccer ball. After the international criminal was kicked by Yun Jian, his entire body went limp. She looked at Kai Yonghen again with a smirk and repeated what she said just now. Hearing Yun Jian repeat what she said just now, Kai Yonghen and the people standing beside him were slightly stunned. And the rest finally reacted and went to help Gu Junjian. However, before Kai Yonghen could finish a glimpse of Yun Jian, Yun Jian's voice suddenly rang out. She was dashing towards the man who had tried to assassinate her. Get down. When the man saw Yun Jian's words came out of nowhere, he was frightened and fired a few more shots, and the others were all stunned. Seeing this, although they didn't know when the ground and rolled twice on the ground, they still bent down as fast as they could. When she stood up, she was already close to the man and the others. Even the veterans in the army international criminal who had been driving the gray Bugatti Veyron earlier made like a grim reaper. He held a Ruger P345 automatic pistol in his hand. They saw that Yun Jian had already snatched the gun from the man's hand and tied him up with his own jacket in a few moves. This international criminal's underling was standing rushed over. This was the scene and the rest did not lie down. They would be stepping on the man's back with one foot. The man's stomach was on the ground and he was tied up by his own jacket. She dodged the bullet that was aimed at her head and men from the army rushed to the scene. After lighting up the scene, they turned their heads and squinted their eyes to look over. Yun Jian pounced towards the international criminal's underling. Her speed was as fast as a cheetah. Chapter 1803. Initially, the people in the military only wanted Gu Junjian to help them stall for time so that the military would not be able to arrest this international criminal. Because the person they wanted to arrest was an international criminal, they sent their best troops this time. But when the group of people arrived at the scene, they saw Gu Junjian and his men squatting on the ground and suppressing the international criminal. Yun Jian was stepping on the international criminal's subordinate's back, not at all afraid that the international criminal's subordinate would be able to escape from her. This scene made the troops who arrived tremble. What the F***ck was going on? They rushed here to prepare for a big fight. Even if they were to accidentally sacrifice themselves in the battle with the international criminal, it was possible. But now, before they could even make a move, the international criminal was already subdued by Gu Junjian and this little girl? Although they were surprised, the group of people who rushed over still heaved a sigh of relief. Fighting with an international criminal who had a gun in his hands. There would definitely be casualties. These people in the army all had relatives. If one person died, it would mean that they would harm an entire family. But for the sake of the people, they had to fight. If they didn't get rid of these people in this era, how could there be peace in the modern era? But what these people didn't expect was that Gu Junjian and his men actually managed to subdue the international criminal. They only had a few people. They actually managed to subdue the international criminal. This was a great achievement. The leader of the men in the army walked towards Gu Junjian. This man obviously knew Gu Junjian. When he spoke, Yun Jian could tell that this man was the one who called Gu Junjian just now. The man was stunned. Then he looked at Gu Junjian and said, Gu Junjian, Gu Junjian. Oh, good job. You actually brought people to arrest him. Ahem. The ones who arrested him weren't us. It was her. At this moment, Gu Yunjian's university classmate, the man named Yu Chaoning, looked at Yun Jian and said, What? The ones who arrested him weren't you guys but this little girl. The man and the people standing behind him were all stunned. You can take him away. Dad, Mom has been waiting for a long time. Let's go back. Just as the man and the people standing behind him were all stunned, Yun Jian spoke to Gu Junjian. Obviously, she didn't want to make a big deal out of this. Old Wang, my daughter doesn't want to be in the limelight. You know that. We'll leave first. After Gu Junjian handed the international criminal over to the man, he said to the man. The man called Old Wang was stunned. He opened his mouth and finally nodded. After Yun Jian retrieved the necklace she had given Qin Yiru from the man, she turned to get into the jeep with Gu Junjian and the others. The necklace was in a box so no one could see what it was. The jeep left the army. At the entrance of the Xinjia Hotel, Qin Yiru, Wang Defang, and the women and children had been standing there for a long time. During this time Wang Defang kept talking about Yun Jian. Seeing that the men hadn't come back yet, Wang Defang was so worried about her man that she almost cried. At this moment she still kept talking to Qin Yiru coldly. Why did you let that little girl go with you? Are you trying to make trouble? If my man can't come back because of that little girl, I'll kill you. Wang Defang spoke eloquently, and the words that came out of her mouth were very unpleasant. Just as Wang Defang was talking non-stop, Gu Yunjian's jeep drove back. Seeing that the men had returned safely, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. When Yun Jian and the others got out of the jeep, Wang Defang, who was relieved, walked over and grabbed her man's hand. She started talking again. Dear, are you okay? That little girl didn't make trouble for you, right? She's so troublesome. She doesn't have the self-awareness of a child. She only made trouble for the adults. This kind of person is the most disgusting. Wang Defang used her loudspeaker to talk to Yun Jian and Qin Yiru. Su Nina, who was standing next to her, also raised her head. She was very interested in listening to Wang Defang scolding Yun Jian and Qin Yiru. However, just as Wang Defang was scolding Yun Jian and Qin Yiru, Wang Defang's man suddenly shouted back at Wang Defang. If it wasn't for Jun Jian's daughter, we wouldn't have been able to catch up with that international criminal. Not to mention whether or not they could catch him. If the higher-ups give us a reward this time, all the rewards should go to Jun Jian's daughter. Chapter 1804. Wang Defang was not wise, but Wang Defang's husband was still a very wise man. As a soldier, his thoughts were naturally not like Wang Defang's. Wang Defang opened her mouth, but in the end she could not say anything. Her husband actually said that everything that happened just now was all thanks to Yun Jian. Without Yun Jian they would not have been able to complete the mission. This explanation shocked Wang Defang so much that she was stunned. Then Su Nina, who was beside her, also trembled. Hey. You guys don't know, but that international criminal just now, what international criminal is that? Yun Jian's daughter just stepped on that international criminal's head, and that international criminal was so scared that he was trembling all over. Now that the incident had passed, Gu Yunjian's university classmate used a storytelling tone to narrate what happened just now. I'll say. Even if Yunjian's daughter just exploded that international criminal's head, that international criminal did not dare to say a word. Yunjian's daughter is simply too amazing. Ah. Gu Yunjian's university classmate was getting more and more excited as he spoke, but what he said scared Wang Defang and Su Nina so much that their faces turned pale. Especially when he said that she exploded that international criminal's head, Su Nina looked deeply at Yun Jian, and her face turned pale. Su Nina had been staying at Gu Yunjian's house for the past few days to freeload, and she was already shameless to the extreme. Later, when Gu Yunjian told her about it, Su Nina's reaction told everyone that no matter what he said, she was still going to freeload at his house. However, at this moment, Su Nina looked at Yun Jian and her face turned pale. She was really scared. Who could tell her why Qin Yiru looked so easy to bully, but she actually had such a terrifying daughter. At this moment, Su Nina was hugging her son, Su Liao's head, but she was thinking in her heart. She would never go to Gu Yunjian's house again. It was too scary. Compared to her own life, going to Gu Yunjian's house was simply risking her life. Hence, Su Nina slipped away without anyone noticing, and she did not even say goodbye. When Yun Jian saw this, a cold smile formed on her face. Naturally, she knew what Su Nina was thinking. Once she was home, she took a shower and packed her luggage simply. Tomorrow she was going to the countryside with Chen Sini. She was going to stay there for a period of time, so naturally she had to bring some necessities. The moment she went to bed, she heard a text message notification sound from her phone. There was a text message from Huashi's text message. Where are you going tomorrow? Go to bed, sleep early. She's text a text message, a text a reply. She replied to replies, text a reply to him, reply to reply, a reply to reply. Take a guess too. After sending the text message, Yun Jian turned off her phone and went to sleep. He did not send any more text messages, because he knew that Yun Jian was about to fall asleep. The next day, when Yun Jian arrived at Chen Sini's house, she saw Zhang Xiaofeng helping Chen Sini to load her bags into her car. When he saw that Yun Jian was carrying a simple shoulder bag, he looked at Yun Jian and shouted, "Master!" Obviously, Zhang Xiaofeng was going to the countryside as well, and he had probably asked for leave from school. Chen Sini had already gotten into the car. She had just recovered, and it was not suitable for her to stand for too long. Now her head was leaning against the car. "Have you set off?" Yun Jian asked Zhang Xiaofeng as she spoke. "Master, we're waiting for one more person." Zhang Xiaofeng smiled wickedly at Yun Jian, as though he was betraying his master. Yun Jian glanced sideways at Zhang Xiaofeng. Just as she was wondering what Zhang Xiaofeng's expression meant, someone suddenly wrapped his arms around her waist, and a fresh, familiar scent wafted into her nose. It was him. Ce hugged Yun Jian intimately from behind. Big brother C. You're here. I'll leave first. I'm going to look for Cinny. Zhang Xiaofeng laughed as he glanced at Ce. Then he ran into the car like a wisp of smoke. He originally wanted to call Ce Grand Master, since he was his master's husband. Chapter 1805. Yun Jian was still puzzled yesterday about why Ce had sent her a message asking her where she was going, but she did not think much about it. Today Ce had appeared. She pressed her lips together as Ce hugged her from the back. Yun Jian looked up at his handsome face and asked, "Didn't you go back to the organization?" "I'm done with the organization. I'll be by your side for the time being." Ce looked at Yun Jian lovingly, only reflecting her in his deep and beautiful eyes. It was Zhang Xiaofeng who told Ce that Yun Jian was going to the countryside to accompany Qin Cinny to recuperate. Ce rarely appeared in the past few days after he received the news. He would either show up for a while or leave after a while, staying in the organization to finish all his work and plan to go to the countryside with Yun Jian. Leaving all the worldly affairs behind, no one could disturb him and Xiao Jian in the tranquil environment of the countryside. Ce had even sent Adam and Emo-san away this time. Before he came to look for Yun Jian, Ce had told Adam and Emo-san to go wherever they liked. Just as Ce's plan was going well, Yun Jian suddenly suggested, "Xiao Zhu and the other two haven't come out to play for a long time. Why don't we apply for leave for them and take them out for a walk?" Before Yun Jian could finish, Ce's thin lips moved to reject her directly. No. Yun Jian was speechless. Yun Jian blinked. If they were not at the entrance of Qin Cinny's house right now, Ce would have cupped Yun Jian's head and pressed his lips against hers directly when he saw how adorable Yun Jian was. "Jian, we're leaving. My grandpa's house is a little far from Longmen City, we have to depart earlier." At this moment, Qin Cinny's voice sounded. She couldn't move her head, so she could only shout from the car. 2 hours later, Qin Cinny's private car went around many mountains and finally arrived at a place called Jinda Village. Jinda Village was a village near the mountains. From here, it would take half an hour to reach the nearest town. Moreover, Jinda Village was not rich. Every family's house was only 1 story high. When Yun Jian was reborn, she came to Xinjiang Town. Xinjiang Town was a town while this was just a village. Yun Jian used to roam the peak of the world, and the simplest place she had been to after her rebirth was probably Xinjiang Town. However, a town was still a town. It was definitely much better than the countryside. The people in Jinda Village were poor and there was no place to work. They had to go to town to work, but the daily trip to town was not enough to cover their salary. Therefore the people here usually farmed for a living. Qin Cinny's family was not poor. Her mother had asked her grandpa to leave Jinda Village more than once, but he refused to leave. Since her grandpa's wife, Qin Cinny's grandmother, had passed away early, Qin Cinny's grandfather and grandmother had been living in Jinda Village since they were children. From learning how to walk to running and jumping, getting to know each other, getting married and staying together for the rest of their lives, Qin Cinny's grandmother had passed away early. Her grandpa did not leave because he did not want to leave the land where he had lived with his lover for the rest of his life. When one was gone, it was an obsession to stay with a hometown that had changed. Some people could stay with this obsession for the rest of their lives. "We're here. This is the place." Qin Cinny told Yun Jian as she turned to look at Yun Jian after getting off the car with Zhang Xiaofeng's help. The car was parked at the village entrance. After Yun Jian and the rest alighted, the car drove back to Longmen City. It was already 7 in the evening when they left at 5. There was still a hint of afterglow lingering in the sky, looking beautiful. Chapter 1806. It was easy to find the first house at the entrance of the village. The houses here were all 1 story high and were not made of cement. Instead, they were made of mud and tiles. These mud and tile houses were still left in many villages in the modern era and were not demolished. Many villages in the modern era had been replaced with mud and tile houses. However, in 1999, most of the houses in the villages were still mud and tile houses. These houses did not look sturdy and were very simple. It was obvious that these were the houses of the poor. However, in this era all the houses in the villages were like this. Those who could build cement houses were the richest in the village. The roads in the countryside were not like those in the town or the city. The roads here were all bumpy and filled with cement. It was unrealistic for some people who were used to living in the big cities to move here permanently. However, it was very romantic for rich people to stay here for a short period of time. Fly, 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 fly. The butterfly is flying. Yun Jian saw a few children playing at the entrance of the first house at the entrance of the village. Dong Dong, is Grandpa home? Chen Sini looked at one of the children and called out to him. The boy was called He Dong Dong. He was Chen Sini's cousin. He was 6 years old this year and was very smart. Sister Sini? He Dong Dong saw Chen Sini and stopped playing with his friends. He turned around and ran into the house. Grandpa, Grandpa. Sister Sini and brother Xiaofeng brought a pretty sister and a handsome brother back. He Dong Dong shouted as he ran into the house. After a while, an old man with a walking stick came out. This old man was Chen Sini's grandfather, He Qing. He Qing used to be a teacher and was a role model. He was very strict with his children since they were young. Therefore, Chen Sini's mother, He Xia, had the temperament of a lady from a wealthy family. He Qing was now relying on his pension to get by. Sini and Xiaofeng are back? Do you have guests? Quick, come in. He Qing invited Yun Jian and Ce into the house in a friendly manner. Although the house was simple and crude, He Qing still made a cup of tea for Yun Jian and Ce. Yun Jian and Ce didn't dislike it at all. Our pretty big sister and handsome big brother boyfriend and girlfriend? At this moment, He Dong Dong, who had been playing outside, surrounded Yun Jian and Ce with a group of friends and asked curiously. Yun Jian and Ce had outstanding looks. They had never seen such a beautiful young lady and handsome young man before, so they all rushed into the house. A few children even ran to the village to gather all the other children to watch Yun Jian and Ce. Surrounded by so many small heads, Yun Jian felt a little embarrassed. Yes. However, Ce, who was sitting next to Yun Jian, didn't look embarrassed at all in front of so many children. He even hugged Yun Jian's waist and hooked his arm around her waist. The handsome Junyan made all the children stare at him in a daze. How could there be such a good-looking big brother in this world? I heard from my big brother that boyfriend and girlfriend means husband and wife. Husband and wife have to kiss and hug each other at night. Shameful. A little girl hugged the little boy next to her and even pouted to show everyone that she wanted to kiss him. Does that mean hugging each other and bumping into each other like my parents? Last time, I secretly saw my dad hugging my mom without wearing any clothes. They were sticking to each other and bumping into each other. A smart kid added. As he spoke, he turned to look at Yun Jian and Ce and asked innocently, "What's wrong?" Chapter 1807. The child asked innocently. He even blinked his eyes when he asked the question. His small head cooperated with the other curious little heads beside him. He didn't even realize that he had just asked such a shocking question. Yun Jian, Ce, Chen Sini, and Zhang Xiaofeng were sitting at an old-fashioned square table in the main room of Chen Sini's grandfather, He Qing's house. At this moment, Yun Jian and Ce were sitting close to each other. Ce was holding Yun Jian's slender waist with one hand intimately. Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng were sitting at the square table, each occupying a seat. After hearing the innocent child's words, Zhang Xiaofeng spat out a mouthful of tea water mixed with his own unique scent. The moment he spat out the tea water, Zhang Xiaofeng turned his head fiercely to prevent himself from spitting the tea water on anyone present. Cough, 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 cough. Zhang Xiaofeng was viciously robbed of his breath. He really didn't expect these mischievous children to say such things. What was worse was that these children were looking at Yun Jian and Ce with expectant gazes, waiting for Yun Jian and Ce's reply. This cough, cough, cough. I see that there is still some sunlight outside. Sini, you haven't been in the sun for a long time. Let me bring you out to experience it. Zhang Xiaofeng randomly came up with an excuse and walked over to Chen Sini to help her up before walking out. At this time the sun had already set. Perhaps the sun set later in Jinda village and rose later in the morning, so at this time, there was still a trace of afterglow outside. Grandfather, He Qing, was personally cooking in the kitchen. He said that he wanted to properly entertain Yun Jian and Ce, these two guests who came from afar. After Zhang Xiaofeng found an excuse to bring Chen Sini out of the house, there was only Ce and Yun Jian left in the house, along with the rowdy kids who were asking questions without knowing the gravity of the situation. Seeing that Ce and Yun Jian were silent, Ce sized up Yun Jian with his pair of beautiful eyes that made everything around them pale in comparison. The child who asked the question earlier innocently asked again, "Pretty sister, will handsome brother bump into each other? My mom said that only two people who love each other will do this. Doesn't handsome brother like pretty sister?" After the child finished speaking, all the children looked at Yun Jian and Ce curiously. Yun Jian's face was flushed the moment the child spoke. Ce's lips curled into a wicked smile. From beginning to end, he didn't move his eyes away from Yun Jian's body. Under the expectant gazes of the group of children, Ce withdrew his hand from Yun Jian's slender waist and said with a gentle gaze, "Her entire body is mine. Every part of her body belongs to me, so, what do you think?" Ce didn't say it out loud. When the child asked such an innocent and bashful question, Ce and Yun Jian reacted differently. Yun Jian's face turned slightly red, and her cheeks even turned pink. On the other hand, Ce's initial reaction was to raise his handsome face. That devilishly handsome face of his really deserved a beating. Then will handsome brother and beautiful sister really bump into each other? The child opened his not-so-good-looking face and smiled. He seemed to be bored, so he asked another question. Idiot handsome brother means that he and pretty sister definitely won't stop at bumping into each other. At this moment, Chin Sini's cousin He Dong Dong added on mischievously. After he finished speaking, Yun Jian's face turned even redder. The surrounding children all giggled. The child was still unsatisfied. He looked at Ce and asked curiously, "Then will the handsome brother hug the beautiful sister while bumping into her, kissing and hugging at the same time? My parents will do that." Chapter 1808. Yun Jian felt like smacking Ce to death. He was probably the only person in the world who could say such things in front of a large group of children without blushing or skipping a beat. Most importantly, the group of children in front of him were all inexperienced children who did not know much about the world and were not scheming. They were all children who spoke without thinking. "What are you talking about?" Yun Jian nudged Ce with her elbow as she was pulled into Ce's embrace. To Ce, it sounded like she was being coquettish with him. Subconsciously, his lips curled upwards. Ce, who did not feel any pain from being nudged by Yun Jian, wished he could keep her in his arms for the rest of his life. He was willing to listen to her whining for the rest of his life, just like how she whined to him just now. He really wanted to devour her without leaving any bones behind so that she could never leave his side. "Do you like children, Xiao Jian?" Ce's lips pressed against Yun Jian's ear, his mellow and alluring voice lingering around Yun Jian's ears. Yun Jian heard it clearly. Yun Jian did not think much of Ce's sudden question. Children. If one were to ask if Yun Jian liked children, one would have to look at the type of children they were. Why was that? Yun Jian liked children like her younger brother, Xiao Yunzhu, Duan Li, and Duanya, who were obedient and a little lively when necessary. However, if they were like the brats she had met in the past who were unreasonable, and took the lead to bully kids younger than them, if they were brats like that, she would not like them. Ce watched as Yun Jian's pretty face wore a thoughtful expression. As he watched, he could not help breaking into a grin. The group of children who stood around watching Yun Jian and Ce were like curious babies. They did not make a sound but kept looking at Yun Jian and Ce. "Does pretty sister like a kid like me? Not only can I recite the text, but I can also help my parents with the housework." A little boy confidently patted his chest and said to Yun Jian, Me too, me too. I'm so cute, pretty sister must like me, right?" A little girl with 2 ponytails shook her head. Her ponytails swayed left and right as she stood in front of Yun Jian. She looked at Yun Jian expectantly and asked. With this question, the surrounding children all rushed to ask Yun Jian if she liked them in front of Yun Jian. It was true that the children in the countryside were wild, but these children would not fight over this matter. They just argued verbally. "Pretty sister is my cousin's friend. Of course she likes me the most." At this time, He Dong Dong shook her little head and said confidently, "Pretty sister won't like you. I'm the cutest and prettiest sister. She must like someone like me the most." The little girl with 2 ponytails rushed to say. After saying this, the little girl blinked her eyes and looked at Yun Jian. She looked at Yun Jian with a pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak. The sound of arguing in the house about which child Yun Jian liked the most could be heard at the door. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chin Sini sat on the bench at the door. Because Chin Sini's head hurt, Zhang Xiaofeng let Chin Sini lean her head on his shoulder. The cousins who usually bickered the most were the most harmonious at this time. If it was in the past, Zhang Xiaofeng would always tease Chin Sini. But recently, because Chin Sini's head hit the ground and she almost died, he was very careful even when supporting Chin Sini. They would still argue a little, but now it was Zhang Xiaofeng who was the weaker one. "Hey, good thing we came out. Those kids in the house are too scary." Hearing the noise coming from the house, Zhang Xiaofeng could not help but complain. Chin Sini leaned her head on Zhang Xiaofeng's shoulder and grinned. She was really happy that Yun Jian could be so happy. At this moment, a muffled male voice came from the house. That mellow and pleasant voice immediately stopped the quarreling children in the house. The words that came out of Ce's mouth were overbearing and arrogant, as if she was fighting over a lollipop with a child. Chapter 1809. Siyi's expression was fierce, like a bully who had snatched a lollipop from a child's hand and told the child to go to the store to buy another lollipop for him. Siyi's behavior stunned the group of children present for quite a while. Among them was a 4-year-old girl who had been standing in the corner since the beginning. She had been looking at Yun Jian and Siyi with great interest. In the end, it didn't take long for the surrounding boys and girls to start quarreling. The 4-year-old girl wasn't very sensible to begin with. Children in the countryside were usually left to their own devices. When they were young, they would be allowed to follow a large group of children to go out and play with a large group of children. Perhaps this phenomenon was less common in the countryside now because people nowadays treated children like treasures. In the past, people were poor. The poorer they were, the more children they had. A couple would usually have no less than 3 children. In fact, there were many villagers who had 7 or 8 children. This wasn't surprising at all. With more children, there was less love and care. In the early years, even the death of a child wasn't a big deal to some parents. Of course, 1999 wasn't as feudal as it used to be. In this era, the status of children was much higher in the eyes of some parents. This 4-year-old girl was young to begin with. She had followed her brothers and sisters here to join in the fun. In fact, she didn't understand what was happening at all. But after a while, this big brother suddenly said something fiercely, like a bully who had snatched a child's lollipop. Siyi's actions scared the 4-year-old girl to tears. Wah! Big brother is so fierce, wah 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 wah. So fierce, I'm scared, I'm scared. As she spoke, the 4-year-old girl seemed to be unable to find her way home. Tears fell from her cheeks as she walked aimlessly out of the door. She even started yelling. This gave Qin Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng, who were sitting outside the door, a fright. What's going on? Big brother C is fighting with a child? Zhang Xiaofeng's eyes widened. He was clearly frightened by the scene in front of him. What's going on? My master's husband actually scared a child to tears. This is too awesome. Fighting with a child? Qin Sini could feel Siyi's deep love for Yun Jian. She covered her mouth and laughed. Then she lifted her head from Zhang Xiaofeng's shoulder and urged Zhang Xiaofeng. Hurry up and chase the little girl back. She ran out crying. What about you? Does your head still hurt? Zhang Xiaofeng looked at Qin Sini and asked. I'm fine. Go after that little girl, Qin Sini said. Before Qin Sini could finish, Yun Jian walked out of the house. Si followed behind her. A large group of children followed behind them. Si was probably the only person who could talk to a child and make them cry. Yun Jian glanced at him, then chased after the crying little girl. After the little girl walked out of He Qing's house, she started crying and running at lightning speed. In the countryside, neighbors lived next to each other. Now that the sky was completely dark and the street lamps were lit up, these neighbors liked to sit at the door and chat with their neighbors before it was time to sleep after dinner. In this era, there were no smartphones or electronic products. Other than working and eating, people were used to sitting together and chatting. When the neighbors saw the little girl running back in tears, they curiously took a few more glances at her. Although the little girl's legs were short, her running speed was not slow. The little girl's house was not far away. In the blink of an eye, the little girl rushed into the house. Not long after, an old lady in her 50s or 60s walked out fiercely with the crying little girl in her arms. Granny, an older brother is bullying me. Boo, he's so fierce, so fierce. The little girl hung on the old lady's arms and cried loudly. Granny was the local dialect for calling a grandmother. Old ladies in the countryside usually favored boys over girls. Of course, when their own daughter quarreled with other people, the old lady was not stupid. She would definitely help her own daughter. Seeing Yun Jian and Ce walking over and hearing her daughters crying, the old lady glanced at Ce and scolded her without asking for the reason. Chapter 1810. This little girl's grandmother's surname was Lu. Old woman Lu didn't ask for the reason before she started scolding Yun Jian and Ce. This scolding made Yun Jian, who had originally wanted to appease the little girl, raise her eyebrows slightly. Ce acted as if she didn't hear the old woman's scolding. Seeing that Yun Jian and Ce actually ignored her scolding, old woman Lu originally only wanted to show her strength. After all, Yun Jian and Ce were from the city. Old woman Lu said that she wasn't afraid that Yun Jian and Ce were from the city, but since she said it, she was certain of one thing. Old woman Lu clearly distinguished between city dwellers and country dwellers. In old woman Lu's heart, it was her lifelong dream to be a city dweller. Even so, old woman Lu wasn't willing to show weakness in front of Yun Jian and Ce. Old woman Lu, these two children just came to our country. Just now they accidentally spoke a little too loudly and made your child cry. We're neighbors, so don't be so calculative. Give me some face, ha. Chen Sini's grandfather, He Qing, who had heard the commotion from the kitchen, walked over to ease the awkward atmosphere and said a few words to old woman Lu. Seeing that He Qing was speaking up for Yun Jian and Ce, old woman Lu glanced at Yun Jian and Ce again and didn't pursue the matter. He Qing, I'll still give you some face, but these two people from the city are too rude. These two children are my granddaughter's friends. They made my granddaughter cry the moment they arrived. They came to the countryside to play. If this happens again, it won't be so simple. Actually, the people in the countryside were quite kind. Lu carried the little girl. The old lady looked at Yun Jian and Ce. Yun Jian and Ce glanced in the direction that old woman Lu had left. To be honest, it was indeed she then said to Yun Jian and Ce, "Don't worry about the two of you. Lu's tone was disgusting. Don't worry about that. She had to be reasonable. Old hag Lu was famous in our village for being a shrew. It wasn't like she would lose a piece of meat. If anyone provokes her, it's like stepping on a dog's mouth twitch was that just now. Don't be afraid, Granny was he angry with the child because of her? The old lady really thought that Yun Jian's heart was being bullied, so she said this. She ran out. The surrounding people thought that Yun Jian and saw that Yun Jian was looking at him. He was afraid that Yun Jian were from the city. By his fierce attitude, everyone started asking Yun Jian, so he hurriedly explained. This was the first time that Yun Jian holding Yun Jian's little hand. The old lady her head and couldn't help but over to take a look and said, "How adorable! Are the two of you a young couple?" Heard what Yun Jian said in her heart. It's not strange for people in the city to be in a relationship at such a young age. For 3 days and 3 nights. When we were young, if a man and a woman were to be together, into the house, they would be surrounding neighbors who had curiously watched as the little girl rushed into the house and called her grandmother out to support her. Turned to look at Yun Jian. Chapter 1811. He Qing, it would be best if no one dared to covet her for the rest of her life because she could only be his. An old lady sitting at the side smiled as she looked at He Qing, who would dare snatch her away from him. Go and die. Ce was drugged in this lifetime and the drug's name was Yun Jian. After Ce's words, the old ladies, old men, and some middle-aged women and men around them laughed. The children in the village who were around the same age as Yun Jian and Ce had gone to the town to study in middle school or high school, coming back once a week. Those who were better would be admitted to Longmen City. In this era, if someone in the village were to be admitted to Longmen City or other provinces for the Gaokao, it was something that the entire village wanted to know. Coming back to reality, the old ladies and old men had heard a lot of rumors. Usually, young couples like Yun Jian and Ce would only talk about being together, but it was just for fun. How many of them would actually get married and have children? Therefore, the old ladies and old men thought that Ce was joking. Young man, I hope you'll keep your word and marry her. Don't let her down in the future for following you at such a young age. The old lady who spoke just now waved the fan in her hand with a smile as she spoke to Ce. She had never heard of or seen a man like Ce who went overseas to register his marriage. Was he going to Yun as protected the marriage certificate like it was a treasure? His pants pocket. I'm afraid this kind of guy is already extinct. Yun Jian coughed. She did not expect to see him here today to stop Ce. Just as the old ladies and grandpas around them gasped in shock. Ce's other hand had slid into his pants pocket to take out a large booklet. At He Qing's house, Country R's marriage certificate was different from the red booklet in Country Z. Pretty Sister and Handsome Brother certificate was similar to a certificate of marriage and came in many different styles. Same relationship as my parents? One could choose from a cartoon, a landscape, or a variety of other designs. Yun Jian and Ce's marriage certificate was white with a clean background. At this moment, Ce had already taken out the marriage certificate from Country R from his trouser pocket. Yun Jian was speechless. This feeling was a mysterious sense of déjà vu. This is Country R's marriage certificate for Xiao Jian and I. We've registered our marriage here. After Ce showed off the marriage certificate in front of everyone, she carefully put it back into her pocket. The group of old ladies and old men who had been wondering if Yun Jian and Ce were just playing around like other couples were dumbfounded. They're both married? He even went to Country R to register? How urgent was this? Go. You guys actually went overseas to register. The old lady was truly speechless. She had only heard of couples where the man treated the girl's feelings as child's play and tricked the girl into sleeping with him before abandoning her. Chapter 18:12. The child's voice was very loud and clear. It was as if he had been called out by the teacher in class. He was full of confidence and vigor that only children of this age would have. However, as soon as the child finished speaking, the old lady and old lady sitting around, including the middle-aged man and woman, He Qing and Zhang Xiaofeng who came out with him, froze. This kind of thing, it was enough for everyone to keep it to themselves. However, it was the first time something like this was said in front of so many people. Everyone around them couldn't help but blush, not to mention Yun Jian and Ce. Although Yun Jian looked extremely calm on the outside, her rosy cheeks were enough to express her current awkwardness. Ce, on the other hand, held Yun Jian's hand without blushing or skipping a beat. It was as if he was the most shameless person in the universe. He was probably the most shameless person in the world. The only reason he received this award was because of her. Cough cough cough. Little gang, your mom just came out to look for you. It's time for dinner. Your mom is calling you home for dinner. Just as the child, who didn't know what he said wrong, looked around innocently, an elderly woman coughed twice to ease the awkwardness. Then she spoke to the child. The child's name was Fu Gang. The people of Jinda village had either he or Fu as their surname. Most of the people in Jinda village had these two surnames, except for the women who married from other villages such as old woman Lu. My mom is calling me home for dinner? I have to hurry back. There's fish at home today. The child named Fu Gang patted his head and didn't care about what he said just now. He ran down a small path and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes as fast as he could. He Qing, dinner hasn't been served yet, right? Hurry hurry hurry. He's a guest. It's already so late. Aren't you going to bring the guest home for dinner? The elderly woman, who spoke to ease the awkward atmosphere, quickly turned to He Qing and tried to dissolve the awkward atmosphere completely. Hey, Cindy, my friend, come home with me for dinner. The food at home is ready. He Qing immediately realized that old Madame Yang was trying to ease the tension for him. He gave old Madame Yang a grateful look and said to Yun Jian and Ce. They had already taken out their marriage certificate and said everything that needed to be said. Even the things that shouldn't have been said were clear in their hearts. Yun Jian's small hand tightly grasped his large palm. Ce didn't say anything else that would shock the world. Then Yun Jian and Ce followed He Qing back home. He Qing quickly served the dishes. There was no one else at home. He Qing's daughter, Qin Sini's mother, He Xia, had married into Longmen City. He Qing had two sons. The eldest, He Yong, had good grades and became an official after graduation, settling down in Longmen City. The second son, He Lei, was not as well off as his eldest brother. He was currently working hard in Longmen City with his wife, so he left his child, He Dong Dong, in Jingdezhen and asked his old father, He Qing, to take care of her. Therefore, there were only He Qing and He Dong Dong in He Qing's house. All the dishes were served and placed on the square table. Yun Jian and Ce sat together, Zhang Xiaofeng and Qin Sini sat together, while He Qing and He Dong Dong sat together. Old Master He Qing's cooking was not particularly tasty, but Yun Jian enjoyed it. Halfway through the meal, He Dong Dong suddenly shook her head and looked at Yun Jian and Ce, then at Qin Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng. It's Friday tomorrow. My friends' brothers and sisters are back from school. They said they're bringing everyone to the back of the mountain to shoot birds with slingshots. There's also a fishing and prawn competition. We'll barbecue and eat together. Brothers and sisters, can you guys go with Dong Dong to play with everyone? He Dong Dong asked as she looked at Qin Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng with anticipation. then at Yun Jian and Ce. Sure, but you'll have to let the three of them play with you. I'll watch from the side, I can't do strenuous exercise. Qin Sini waved with a smile and looked at Zhang Xiaofeng before her gaze finally landed on Yun Jian. Her brain had just healed from the rupture, so she could not even jump and had to walk slowly. Jian, I'll leave it to you. Qin Sini stuck her tongue out at Yun Jian. Chapter 1813. After dinner and a stroll, Yun Jian and Ce went to bed early. There were not many rooms in He Qing's house, but there was still room for each of them. Ce shamelessly followed Yun Jian into her room. The rooms in He Qing's house were connected one by one and the soundproofing was poor. For example, even if one farted in one's room, the room next door could hear it. In the beginning, Ce wanted to touch Yun Jian's outstretched hand, but when Yun Jian slapped his hand away, there was even a loud fart from next door that sounded like a lion's roar. Ce retracted his pig-trotter hand in silence. It was a dreamless night. Yun Jian woke up in the afternoon the next day. For some reason she slept especially well last night and only woke up in the afternoon. When she woke up, Yun Jian could feel Ce's hand resting on the back of her head as if it had been there for the whole night. She did not know when his hand had started to cushion the back of her head. Tilting her head slightly, she could see his bright and deep eyes. They were very good looking. Ce woke up at 5 or 6 in the morning, but he did not wake Yun Jian up. He kept his hand on the back of her head so that she could lean against it comfortably and stared at her for 5 to 6 hours straight. It was as if he was not tired at all. Jia, brother. Wake up. Let's go catch some birds. They're already at the back of the mountain, we're the only ones left. At this moment there was the sound of someone knocking on the door, and He Dongdong's tender voice came through the door. It's the pretty sister and handsome brother from yesterday. He Dongdong's group of brats and friends, including their brothers and sisters. He pulled a rather handsome boy who was Saturday today and yesterday was 5 meters in height. Many young boys and girls who were around the same age as Yun Jian and told the boy, went to school outside, came back to Jinda's village from town or Longmen City. Yun Jian wanted to say something shocking, but Zhang Xiaofeng did not run ahead of everyone else. The group woke up early this morning and went to the back of the mountain to compete in shooting before he could say anything shocking again. Yun Jian and Ce slept until noon when He Dongdong woke them up. This is my cousin Qin and Qin Sini had already gone to the back of the mountain. He's my brother. After Yun Jian and Zhang Xiaofeng took the initiative to extend his hand to Fu Gang's brother, they followed and introduced them to the back of the mountain. This also prevented Fu Gang from saying with trees and empty land. The scenery here was beautiful. Fu Gang's brother scattered all around the mountain. Zhang Xiaofeng. Millet was the favorite food of birds. Fu Xian looked at the back of the mountain and the others and asked, with millet, are you guys here to hunt birds too? Come over to eat. Yeah, that's right. When Yun Jian and Ce rubbed his head and chuckled, they saw the group of children they saw yesterday as well as their brothers and sisters. No wonder you guys look so delicate. Yun Jian and Ce, you don't know how to shoot birds, the young boys and girls around them took a few extra glances at Yun Jian and Ce. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. Her face was a little dark, her skin was dry, and her nose was big. She wasn't pretty at all. The girl walked over and gave Qin Sini and Yun Jian a few glances. When she saw that Qin Sini and Yun Jian were pretty and their skin was fair and tender, she sniffled and said. However, she was secretly criticizing them in her heart. What's wrong with city dwellers? So what if they're pretty? Look at how delicate they are. They probably haven't even seen a slingshot before, right? What's the use of it? After she finished speaking, the girl glanced at Yun Jian and Qin Sini. Then she pointed at Fu Xian and said to Yun Jian and Qin Sini, brother, you guys are here. Chapter 1814. Mingyu, have you forgotten? Not only does big brother Xian know how to shoot birds, but he's also shot birds with a gun before. Just as the girl finished speaking, a gorgeous and beautiful girl in a princess dress walked over. She looked at the girl who had spoken up for Yun Jian and the others. The girl who had spoken up earlier was about 17 or 18 years old. Her face was a little dark, her skin was dry, and her nose was big. She wasn't pretty and her name was He Mingyu. She was a child from the village and her grades were pretty good. She had managed to get into the town's high school. In a place like Jinda village, even getting into the town's high school was considered pretty good. Of course I know he's very good. I don't need you to tell me that. He Mingyu wasn't friendly to the pretty girl in a princess dress who had walked over to speak up for her. This pretty girl in a princess dress wasn't from Jinda village. She was from the town and her family was pretty rich. This time she had followed Fu Xian back to Jinda village. Fu Xian was pretty good looking and in the eyes of these girls he was a hot steamed bun. He Mingyu also liked Fu Xian, so she wasn't friendly to the girl in a princess dress who had spoken up for her. The girl in a princess dress who had spoken up for He Mingyu was called Gu Lioli. Gu Lioli saw that He Mingyu wasn't friendly to her, so she didn't give He Mingyu any face either. Who are you showing that face to? My big brother Xin shot birds down with a gun before. I saw it with my own eyes. Gu Liuli laughed coldly in the direction of He Mingyu and Yun Jian. Gu Liuli didn't get along with He Mingyu, but she wasn't friendly to Yun Jian and Chen Sini either. They didn't even need to talk to each other about this. Actually, Fu Xn hadn't shot birds with a real gun. He had only used a toy gun. Fu Xn was indeed a little talented. At this moment, when Fu Xn heard He Mingyu and Gu Liuli praising him, he felt a little embarrassed. You guys don't have to care about what the two of them are saying. If they want to play, let's play together. Fu Xn was a good person. He looked at Yun Jian and Ce and laughed. After saying that, he pointed to a wooden barrel not far away. There are many slingshots over there. You can take whatever you want. Don't worry. Seeing Fu Xn being so polite, Zhang Xiaofeng also replied politely. Then he walked over and took a few slingshots. Chen Sini was sitting on a big rock watching them play from afar. Brother bird. There are birds over there. Shoot it down with your slingshot. At this moment, He Dong suddenly noticed a bird pecking at the ground. He whispered to Zhang Xiaofeng. Okay. Zhang Xiaofeng responded. Just as he was about to shoot the bird with his slingshot, He Mingyu beat him to it. He Mingyu said as she walked over with large strides. She pressed a stone on the slingshot in her hand and shot the bird. I saw this bird first. It's mine. A stone bounced over. Not only did it fail to capture the bird, but it also scared it away. He Mingyu did not think it was inappropriate. When she turned around and saw Yun Jian looking at her nonchalantly, she was annoyed and suddenly looked up to tell Yun Jian smugly, "What the hell? What are you looking at? Haven't you seen people using slingshots and small stones to shoot birds? I can tell you're from the city. You really don't know anything." He Mingyu then swung the slingshot in her hand, pretending to be very powerful as she flaunted to Yun Jian and Ce, who was standing next to Yun Jian. She spoke as if she were a Superman in the universe. There's nothing to say about my brother Xion's strength. He's not someone your delicate city dwellers can compare to. Chapter 1815. He Mingyu spoke as if she was a sharpshooter who never missed a single shot. She was extremely cocky. That's true. Mingyu is the best girl in Jinda village. Fu Xion's hit rate is 5 times out of 10, while Mingyu's hit rate is 1 time out of 10. A boy who was about the same age as He Mingyu and Fu Xian walked over and said honestly. He even rubbed his head and smiled a little embarrassedly. What the boy said was the truth. The group of people around them were all children from the countryside, except for Gu Liuli, who was from a wealthy family in town. Children from the countryside were still wild and could run like He Mingyu. She was tan because she was exposed to the sun every day. Children from the countryside were wild, and the birds in the countryside were wild as well. Over the years, people had gained experience in catching birds. And the more birds were caught, the more experienced they became when it came to stealing millet and running away. Whether it was Fu Xan or He Mingyu, they hadn't spent all their time studying how to catch birds since they were young. To have such a hit rate in addition to their age, they were already the best among the younger generation. I don't need you to tell me that I'm also the best among the girls. And she was a perfect match for Fu Xan. He Mingyu glared at Gu Lioli, then turned her arrogant head towards Yun Jian. She seemed to be saying, "How is it? Do you know how good I am now?" The corners of Zhang Xiaofeng's lips twitched. He was so disgusted by He Mingyu's ugly mouth that he almost vomited. "Dong Dong, go play with your little friends." Zhang Xiaofeng handed the slingshot to He Dong Dong, then turned to look at Yun Jian. "Master, we haven't trained today. Why don't we run 10 laps around this mountain? There's a foul smell here. I can't King stand it." Zhang Xiaofeng was quite vicious. Although he didn't mention any names, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that he was talking about He Mingyu. He Mingyu's face instantly darkened. He Mingyu suddenly rolled her eyes. She accidentally heard Zhang Xiaofeng call Yun Jian master, so she opened her mouth and spat at Yun Jian. "Haha, what master? You're actually taking in disciples. Did he think that he was some kind of expert? Learning how to take in disciples? Ah, I'm dying of laughter. A woman from the city like you, what skills do you have to teach your disciple? I advise you to go home, take a piss and look at yourself." When He Mingyu started speaking, Ci pulled Yun Jian into his arms and retreated 5 meters away from He Mingyu, so that He Mingyu's spit didn't hit Yun Jian and Ci. When He Mingyu spoke up to this point, Ci's face turned cold and he frowned. He directly interrupted He Mingyu, "Don't you dare say anything bad about my woman again." Ci's words carried absolute pressure. He Mingyu didn't know why, but he actually shrank back in fear and didn't dare to speak. "Go run 20 laps around the mountain. After that, I'll teach you how to use the butterfly knife." Yun Jian glanced at Zhang Xiaofeng and said. After learning from Yun Jian for so long, Zhang Xiaofeng really wanted to learn how to use the butterfly knife nimbly from Yun Jian. When he heard Yun Jian's words, Zhang Xiaofeng widened his eyes and asked Yun Jian, "Master, really? I'll run right now." After saying that, he disappeared without a trace. Tisk, he's pretty good at acting. He Mingyu didn't dare to speak in front of Ce, but when he saw Yun Jian's expression, he couldn't help but mutter. Zhang Xiaofeng's stamina was getting better and better. After an hour, he finished running 20 laps around the mountain. During this hour, Yun Jian couldn't help but sneer as she watched He Mingyu hit the birdie once out of 10 times. "Master, I'm done running." Zhang Xiaofeng panted heavily and wiped away his sweat. He didn't collapse to the ground like ordinary people after running for so long. He Mingyu watched as Yun Jian took out the butterfly knife from his pants pocket and laughed coldly. "You're just deliberately mystifying things." Gu Lioli also looked over and chuckled softly. On the other side, Yun Jian took out the butterfly knife and swung it twice, then said to Zhang Xiaofeng, "The butterfly knife is nimble. If you want to throw it, you have to fully grasp its structure and how to use it." Just as she said this, Yun Jian's eyes suddenly narrowed. The people around them, including He Mingyu, Gu Lioli, and Fu Xan, were all slightly startled. They saw Yun Jian suddenly throw the butterfly knife. Chapter 1816. The butterfly knife was called a butterfly knife because its blade was very similar to a butterfly. A butterfly had a body and two wings. When the wings were folded, they could wrap around its body. The butterfly knife was the same. The blade of the butterfly knife was the body of the butterfly. If a normal knife was to be stored, it would be stored in the scabbard. However, the butterfly knife's scabbard wasn't a single scabbard. It had two scabbards, one on the left and one on the right. When the two scabbards were folded together, the blade of the butterfly knife could be stored. The two scabbards were like the wings of the butterfly, which could be folded together at will. In other words, the difference between a normal knife and a butterfly knife was that the moment the blade of the butterfly knife was cut, the two scabbards could be combined together to form a normal knife. One could also grab a scabbard and throw it out to hold the blade of the other knife. To put it simply, the butterfly knife was a tool that could be transformed into a normal knife or a non-normal knife. If a person who didn't know how to use a butterfly knife grabbed a scabbard and threw the butterfly knife away, it was very likely that they would accidentally injure themselves. Therefore, when many people first learned the butterfly knife, they would practice for a long time with a non-edged knife. When Yun Jian nimbly played with the butterfly knife in her hand, He Mingyu, Gulioli, and the others in the distance were already dumbfounded. The group of children around them had never seen such a knife. Even if they had never seen a butterfly knife that could be assembled into a normal knife by dropping a blade and two scabbards. Moreover, they had never seen anyone play with the butterfly knife so smoothly. They even let out satisfied cries after eating the millet. Pretty Big Sister is not only pretty, but also amazing. Mingyu, Gulioli, Fuxian, Pretty Big Sister and all the children saw a horrifying scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. When I grow up, I also want to marry a pretty big sister like her. Towards the flock of birds. The large group of children were fast that no one could see clearly with their naked eyes. They were innocent and said whatever came to their minds. Seeing that Yun Jian could play with a knife so nimbly, the flock of birds that had sensed danger and were fluttering in the air in an attempt to escape. Yun Jian with a somewhat crazed gaze. Borrowed momentum and Mingyu and Gulioli, who were watching from afar, the two scabbards formed an ordinary dagger, and they were so angry that they wished they could go over and give Yun Jian a beating. The short blade pierced through the abdomens of three birds that were trying to escape. She held the two scabbards together, making the butterfly knife look like an ordinary knife. Yun Jian's butterfly knife didn't just hit the bird's scabbards that formed the handle. This time, it didn't pierce through just one bird's abdomen. Instead, like skewering mutton, it nailed three birds to the blade of the butterfly knife. Not far away, because no one went to disturb them, a large flock of birds had already landed on the ground to look for food. Chapter 1817. The knife pierced through the abdomen of three birds in a row. Yun Jian's knife skills were so accurate that it frightened and horrified everyone present. He Mingyu and Gulioli were already scared beyond recognition by Yun Jian's move. They couldn't say a word for a long time and even their minds were blank. The group of friends around them were the same. In the end, it was Fu Xian who broke the silence. He looked at Yun Jian in amazement and said, "So, amazing." They originally thought that the girls from the city were all delicate and didn't know how to do this or that. But to be honest, Yun Jian's actions completely overturned everyone's understanding. "My master. Of course she's amazing. You guys haven't seen her at her best. That simply can't be described with words." Zhang Xiaofeng glared back at the people who had mocked Yun Jian, then said smugly, "Follow the knife with your eyes. When you use the knife, you have to use your voice to listen for the position of the target you want to hunt. You're a beginner now, so you have to familiarize yourself with the butterfly knife first. When you're so familiar with it that you can use it nimbly with your eyes closed, you'll be able to do it even without using your eyes. Just as Zhang Xiaofeng finished speaking, Yun Jian's voice was immediately heard. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaofeng very seriously committed Yun Jian's words to memory. Perhaps it was because Zhang Xiaofeng and Qin Sini treated Yun Jian well, but Ce interrupted Zhang Xiaofeng and said, "If you need anything you can ask me." There were only a few people in the world who could receive such words from Ce. Zhang Xiaofeng naturally knew that this grandmaster of his was a very mysterious person. For him to say such words, it was clear that he treated him well. Zhang Xiaofeng was about to call him Big Brother Ce, but he unconsciously called him by the wrong name. Zhang Xiaofeng very emotionally shouted to Ce, "Thank you, Grandmaster." After saying this, Zhang Xiaofeng suddenly realized that he had called him by the wrong name. *CK. He was an idiot, he called out the wrong name. Didn't Grandmaster call Ce old? Just as Zhang Xiaofeng was about to correct himself, he saw Ce who had his arm around Yun Jian curl his lips into a faint smile. His nonchalant face that looked like nothing in the world could catch his eye broke into a faint smile. Was he seeing things? Ce actually liked the way he addressed her? Zhang Xiaofeng felt that he had to address her a lot more. Oh, which family did this child come from? He actually managed to hit 3 birds with a single blade. Our Jinda village's children are getting better at catching birds. He's so different from these kids from the city. At this moment, the voice of the old woman Lu, the grandmother of the little girl who had run home crying yesterday, could be heard. Not far away, old lady Lu was carrying her granddaughter and walking over while talking to him. Old woman Lu wanted her granddaughter to play with everyone. She had just arrived at the back of the mountain when she didn't expect to see the 3 birds hit by the blade. Seeing that Yun Jian and the others were here, she wanted to boast about the prowess of her Jinda village's people. Granny, she was the one who hit these 3 birds with a single blade. Just as old woman Lu was feeling smug, Fu Xian's voice suddenly rang out. He pointed at Yun Jian who was not far away. Hearing this, old woman Lu's expression immediately froze. What? She was the one who had thrown out the dagger of the 3 little birds. Wasn't she just a useless little girl from the city? How could she have such an ability? Just as old woman Lu was holding her granddaughter in shock, Yun Jian and Ce suddenly felt that something was amiss around them. In the next second, she exchanged glances with Ce and walked towards the back of the mountain. Hey, where are you guys going? Seeing this, Fu Xian, He Mingyu, Gulioli and the others were all stunned. Then they followed Yun Jian and Ce's footsteps. Because Qin Sini was there, Zhang Xiaofeng was suspicious and didn't follow. After walking for about 5 minutes towards the back of the mountain, Yun Jian suddenly gestured to the group of people behind her. He Mingyu originally wanted to curse at Yun Jian. What are you trying to do now? But for some reason, when Yun Jian gestured, she didn't immediately react and was about to speak. Just as He Mingyu reacted and was about to speak, the group of people who walked over heard a few whispers. I heard that there's a treasure buried in the back of the mountain in Jinda village. Is this true or not? It's definitely true. I'm guessing it's near this mountain. I heard that even the residents of Jinda village don't know about this. Recently, many outsiders have come to Jinda village. Isn't it because they want to snatch this treasure? Now, the back of the mountain is filled with people from all walks of life. We could meet this group of people at any time. Chapter 18:18. Listening to their conversation, Yun Jian and Ce's eyes glinted as they stood in the dark. He Mingyu, Fu Xian, and Gu Lioli covered their mouths tightly and widened their eyes. They forced themselves not to make a sound as they watched the scene unfold before them. Thankfully, the children who were still in primary school didn't follow them. Old woman Lu didn't follow them either, so they didn't make a sound. The reason why He Mingyu and the others were frightened was because the 2 men standing in front of them were holding 2 pistols in their hands. Listening to the conversation between the two of them, it was clear that the guns in their hands were definitely real. Just as they finished their conversation, a tall and sturdy figure suddenly darted out from the bushes. The two men were tall and thin. With their backs facing Yun Jian and the rest, one of them shouted at the tall and sturdy figure, "Lu Hua, how is it? Is boss here?" "No, boss said the information was wrong. There's no treasure in this godforsaken place behind Jinda village. Let's hurry up and leave. It's all King bluff." The man named Lu Hua waved at the two tall and thin men. His movements were very light and quiet, but Yun Jian and the rest who were hiding in the dark heard him clearly. Hearing that the information was wrong, the two tall and thin men cursed in a low voice and left. It was as if the scene before them was a joke. It was only after the three men were far away that Yun Jian and her friends started to head back. Are the guns in their hands real guns?" He Mingyu trembled for a while before he managed to ask the question he wanted to ask. When they saw Yun Jian and Ci walking towards them, He Mingyu and the rest followed them without a second thought. He Mingyu followed them with the intention of figuring out what Yun Jian was up to. However, on the way back, she was trembling all over and couldn't stop asking in a trembling voice, "If you want to know whether it's real or not, you can just chase after them and ask them." Yun Jian smiled coldly. If Yun Jian had said this before, He Mingyu would probably have retorted. However, He Mingyu was too afraid to say a word now. When they returned to the back of the mountain where they hunted birds, although He Mingyu and the rest were afraid, they didn't mention a word about what had just happened. Fortunately, those who went were around Yun Jian's age. Because they had seen an extremely terrifying scene, no one mentioned what had just happened. When they returned to the back of the mountain, they didn't have the mood to continue hunting birds with their slingshots. They all found an excuse to go home. When it was past 6 in the evening, the sun was about to set and the afterglow of the sky was slowly blooming. Dinner had yet to be served. He Qing did not make dinner in time either. After he came back from outside, he hurriedly called Yun Jian, Ci Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng into the house. "Sini, I've called. Your family's car will be here to take you back to Longmen City later," He Qing said, looking flustered. "Go home? Grandpa, we've just arrived yesterday. Why do we have to go back?" Chen Sini was shocked and confused. He Qing kept quiet for 2 seconds before he suddenly glanced at Yun Jian and Ci. Finally, as if he had made a decision, he walked to the door and looked around. Seeing that there was no one there, he closed the door and turned to speak to everyone sternly. He looked at Yun Jian and Ci first. "Sini has told me before that one of you is her best friend and the other is her best friend's man. It's believable. I won't keep this a secret from all of you." As he spoke, He Qing looked at the group and sighed. "A lot of foreigners have come to Jinda village recently. I don't know if you guys know that there's a lot of foreigners coming to the back of the mountain recently, saying that they're here to look for treasure." Yun Jian's deep eyes narrowed when she heard that. He Qing's solemn voice continued, "They've been looking for treasure in the back of the mountain but to no avail. Some of them have gone back while some are still unwilling to give up. I heard that a group of people have come recently. They're world-class bigwigs and they even have guns with them. I heard from someone at the village entrance just now that they won't leave until they get their hands on the treasure. They're even going from house to house to search for the treasure they want." As he spoke, He Qing hurried to his bed and bent under it to lift up a piece of floorboard under the bed to take out an ancient box. He Qing went over and shoved the box into Chen Sini's arms before he told Chen Sini and the rest anxiously, "Brother, you're here." Chapter 18-19. Grandpa. Then what are you going to do? Chen Sini had never heard of this before, let alone the fact that her family had an ancestral treasure. She was completely stunned and asked after a moment of silence. He Qing's words made Yun Jian blink as well. The fact that He Qing could say this in front of her and Ci was proof that he trusted her and Ci a lot. Zhang Xiaofeng was equally stunned by He Qing's words. Ci, who was beside them, acted like he did not hear He Qing at all. As the leader of an Hun group, what treasure could Ci not have? To Ci, those rare treasures were not as precious as his Xiao Jian. His treasure was Xiao Jian. Other than that, no one or anything could replace it. Dong Dong and I will stay here. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Those people don't even know that the treasure is in our house. Anyway, Sini, take it and leave quickly. Your family's car will drive to the village entrance to pick you up later," He Qing said solemnly. This family heirloom had been with the He family for a long time and had been passed down for many generations. About a year or two ago, someone suddenly spread the news that there was a treasure in the mountain behind Jinda village. The villagers did not know about it, but it was a hot topic outside. There were many people who came to the mountain behind Jinda village to search for the treasure but to no avail. Basically, they would leave when they did not find the treasure after searching the mountain behind Jinda village. However, the group of people who came these 2 days was said to be sent by an international bigwig. All of them were armed with guns. It was obvious that they were gangsters. When He Qing was in the village just now, he heard them say that they would not leave until they found the treasure. He Qing panicked. He quickly called Qin Sini back. Beside him planning stood to
a
have
person
her
who
leave
was
with
about
the
the
same age as him
As they
and looked
spoke,
very
a
much
car
like
honked
him.
at the door.
The person called
He Qing
Liang
got
was
Qin
He
Sini's
Qing's to
younger
hold the
brother,
antique
He
box
Liang.
tightly and told
Brother,
everyone
what's
to
this
pack
thing
up
in
and
your
leave.
granddaughter's arms?
The car's here.
Where are they going?
Sini, go back to
Liang's
Longman's
eyes
city
shone
quickly
when he
and
saw
pass
what
this
Qin
box to
Sini
your
was
mom.
holding.
Don't let
He
your
Liang,
eldest and
do you
second
know what
uncles
you're saying?
know about it. The menacing
He Qing
men around
reminded
them were
Qin Sini.
obviously the
He
world-class
Qing knew
bigwigs.
very well that
He
his
Qing's
eldest and
eyes
second
widened in
sons were
shock when he
greedy.
heard He
If
Liang's
they knew
words.
that there was a
You
treasure
don't
in
have
their
to call
house,
me by my
they would
full
sell
name,
it for
brother.
money immediately.
I can hear you. As he spoke, He
He
Qing
Liang
led
said
Qin
to He
Sini
Qing
in
in
a
a and
sarcastic
the others
tone.
out of the door.
After saying
However,
this,
as soon as he walked out of his
wanted
house,
to put on an
He
act
Qing
just
saw a
now,
car parked not
immediately
far
revealed
away.
his true
Beside
colors.
the car stood a
Ha,
group
brother,
of ferocious-looking
you're so
people.
nice to me.
This group
Our
of
father was
fiendish
so
people
nice
had
to you
guns
when
in
he
their
passed
hands.
away.
And the leader
He
of
even
this group
passed
of
on such a
fierce-looking
precious
people
thing to
was
you.
the man with a
If it
tattoo
wasn't
on
for
his
my
chest
neighbor,
standing
old
at the very
Wang,
front,
who overheard the
beside him was
conversation
someone
between
He
you
Qing
and our
was familiar
father,
with.
I wouldn't even
Liang,
know
why
that
are
our
you
family
here?
had passed
He
on such a
Qing looked
treasure.
at the leader of the group of people in surprise. Chapter 1820. He Qing's old father had already passed away. Before he passed away, he gave the family heirloom to He Qing and told He Qing to pass it on. When it came to family heirlooms, some people would think about how to sell it for money. Others would want to pass it on even if they starved to death. Of course, there were very few people who could do the latter. He Qing was one of them. He Qing's old father had long seen through his other son, He Liang's character. That was why He Qing's old father gave the family heirloom to He Qing. At this moment, after hearing He Liang's words, He Qing suddenly thought of something. His finger trembled as he pointed at the group of ferocious-looking people and said loudly, "Liang, could it be that these people, were you the one who called them here?" His own younger brother had betrayed him. He Qing didn't know how to describe this feeling. "My brother, don't look as if you were the one who suffered a great loss. When that old man gave you the family heirloom, did he remember that I was his son too?" I don't mind telling you. I was also the one who spread the news about the family heirloom in Jinda village. He Liang's face made Qin Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng feel nauseous. There was a glint in Yun Jian's eyes. Si Yi's arm around her waist never loosened. He Liang's words made He Qing's expression change. He Qing couldn't believe that his younger brother would betray him like this. He clutched his heart and was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "What are you guys waiting for? Hurry up and snatch the treasure. It's in that girl's arms." He Liang suddenly said to the leader standing next to him as he pointed at Qin Sini. Next to He Qing's house was the sports field of Jinda village. Therefore, all the villagers were attracted by the commotion and came to see what was going on. Whether it was the old woman Lu He Mingyu whom Yun Jian and the others met in the back of the mountain, Gu Lioli or Fu Xian's group, they all heard the commotion and came over. When they saw the leader standing there with a group of fierce-looking people, and each of them holding a shiny pistol in their hands, these ignorant people in the village all turned pale with fright. "How dare you order me around?" The leader glanced at He Liang and waved his hand, ordering his men to arrest He Liang. "What are you doing? Didn't you say that you would share half of the treasure with me?" He Liang was still in shock when he was pinned down. He only calmed down when the leader's subordinate pointed the gun at his head. "My name is Henry, I'm the younger brother of D Country's arms tycoon Henry Livy. Old man, if you know what's good for you, you'd better hand it over or else, he," the leader said as he twirled the pistol in his hand. The scene of He Liang betraying He Qing and Henriquez betraying He Liang made everyone tremble in fear, not daring to utter a single word. Looking at the shiny pistols, He Qing clenched his fist. He didn't expect that in the end, the one who ruined his family's heirloom was his own brother. "Old man, give it to me. Otherwise I'll kill you." Henriquez saw that He Qing didn't take out the treasure, so he grabbed the gun and pointed it at He Qing's head. "I won't give it to you." Just when everyone thought that He Qing would not be able to protect his family's heirloom, a beautiful female voice rang out. Yun Jian quietly took the antique box from Qin Sini and held it in her hand. She crossed her arms and looked at Henriquez in front of everyone as she said those words. "What did you say? Give it to me." Henriquez heard Yun Jian's words and angrily pointed the gun at Yun Jian as he roared. The gun was actually pointed at Yun Jian's head. She just provoked Henriquez, who had a gun in his hand. Was she looking for death? The surrounding residents of Jinda village, including Fu Xian, He Mingyu and the others,
All took a deep breath. They were so scared that their faces turned extremely pale. Old woman Lu was so scared that her legs were paralyzed. Just when Henriquez was overbearing, a gunshot sounded. Without giving anyone a chance to react, this shot was aimed at Henriquez's wrist that was pointing the gun at Yun Jian's head. The bullet flew into Henriquez's wrist at a speed that he couldn't react to at all. The nerves in Henriquez's wrist were destroyed on the spot. The gun in his hand that was pointing at Yun Jian's head fell to the ground unconsciously. No one could see who fired the gun. When everyone looked in the direction of the frightening bullet, they saw a shiny silver gun appear in Si Yi's right hand while holding Yun Jian's waist. In terms of shooting skills, Si Yi was invincible in this world. With a dark expression, Si Yi looked at Henriquez without a change in his expression. After he shot Henriquez's wrist in a swift motion that no one knew when he had taken out his gun and shot, a voice so cold that it shocked everyone rang. It was directed at Henriquez. Chapter 1821. The surrounding people were shocked by Si Yi's actions. What was even more frightening was that Si Yi also had a gun. And all of Henry's subordinates also had guns. Even if everyone knew that Si Yi had a gun, they would never have thought that Si Yi would do such a thing. Just because Henry pointed his gun at Yun Jian, Si Yi fired at him. Not to mention Si Yi's marksmanship, just his actions alone were enough to show that he was disregarding his own life just to protect Yun Jian. There were many girls present and Si Yi was so handsome. When these girls saw this scene they couldn't help but be tempted. Nowadays, how many boys would really disregard their own lives for the sake of the girl they liked? Just as everyone was thinking this, Henry, who had one of his wrists crippled, held his hand and roared, "You actually dared to shoot at me. Kill him. Kill them for me. After taking the treasures, don't leave a single one alive." Henry's tone was very agitated. It was the kind of furious roar that came from enduring the pain in his wrist. So what if Si Yi had a gun? He was only one person after all. The Jinda village residents standing in the distance were so frightened that their legs went soft. Henry had obviously suffered all kinds of knife and gun wounds in the past. How could he be ordinary in the black market? Although Henry was in great pain from Si Yi's attack, he could still endure it. Just as he growled, Henrius held his injured wrist. His eyes darted around, not looking at Yun Jian closely just now. Now that he was looking at her delicate and beautiful face, he could see that she was delicate and pretty. She was more perfect than any girl he had ever had. Henrius' eyes suddenly narrowed, and his lower body swelled. Perhaps because Si Yi dared to shoot at him and injure him, Henry wanted to take revenge. He pointed at Yun Jian and said to his subordinates, "Don't kill this girl. Kill everyone else. How dare you injure me? I'll king rape your woman in front of the whole village." Without any hesitation, Henry wanted to take revenge on was naturally Henriquez's temple had hurt him. The residents of Jinda village had never seen military tycoon Henry. At the same time, the residents of Jinda village retreated 3 feet in fright. Si Yi didn't plan to make a move, but after hearing Henriquez's words, he killed someone. Si Yi's eyes flashed. The second before Henriquez closed his eyes, even he himself could not bear to touch his widened in disbelief as he fell to the ground. To die now. His subordinates let go of Yun Jian's waist and took 2 steps towards Henry. These assassins could even buy him time to escape the pursuit of a top 10 international secret agent or assassin. However, the moment Henriquez spoke, Si Yi just now was like a phantom appearing in front of him in seconds and killing him directly. He directly passed by Henriquez's subordinates who were protecting him first in the international secret agent ranking. No other male in the world could do this. The gun in his hand was pressed against Henriquez's temple before Henriquez could even react. His body had already fallen to the ground. The surrounding residents, including Fu Xian, He Mingyu, and the rest, had a drastic change of expression as they retreated to the corner of the wall in fear. Even Henry's men were stunned by Si Yi's simple yet fast speed that could not be captured by the naked eye. At this moment, Si Yi had put away the gun in his hand. With both hands in his trouser pockets, he kicked Henriquez's body more than 10 meters away, causing Henriquez's body to fall onto Henriquez's most prized subordinate. In front of everyone, Ci's mellow voice that was so cold that it was frightening rang. He spoke openly about his identity to Henry's subordinates. Chapter 1822. An Hun Group. Henry's men were not as smart as Henry. Once they heard what Ci said, they assumed that Ci was from an Hun Group. In the underworld, anyone who was related to an Hun Group was terrifying. Therefore, these subordinates who wanted to avenge Henriquez were all frightened. In less than 3 minutes, they left the scene with Henry's body. Everything seemed to have returned to how it was before. The only thing left was the scene that reeked of gunpowder. There was also He Qing's younger brother, He Liang's battered body. Everyone stared at Ce as if they had seen a ghost. The gazes from the people of Jinda village could no longer be described as horrifying. Murder. He actually killed someone. It was obvious that the people around them did not know about an Hun Group. No one here knew the meaning of an Hun Group. It's good that he's dead. That guy just now has killed a lot of people. He's an outlaw from Germany coming to Country Z to provoke us. Does he really think that there's no one in Country Z? He deserves it. At this time, an old man knocked on the ground with his walking stick and said loudly, "That's right. What's the big deal about him, a German coming to Country Z to show off?" That's right. The older generation had a deeper sense of patriotism, so when the old man finished speaking, the others around him agreed. Their voices were loud and clear. In the end, it became the group of old men shouting at Ce, "Well done, young man. We support you." In the end, the matter was left unsettled. The people of Jinda village were almost harmed by Henry, who came to hunt for treasure because of He Liang. To prevent people from coming here to hunt for treasure, the first thing the village chief did was to deny He Liang's rumor that there was treasure in the mountain behind Jinda village. He Liang was left to He Qing to deal with. However, to prevent He Liang from coveting his family's heirloom, He Qing had Chen Sini bring it back to Longmen City quickly and pass it to Chen Sini's mother, He Xia. At this moment, Yun Jian and Ce had also ended their short stay in the countryside and returned home. He had already given the eternal necklace, which he had captured from the international criminals, to Qin Yiru. Qin Yiru was already wearing it. On the third day of their return to Longmen City, Adam, who had just returned from a trip with Lan Su, booked a 5-star hotel in Longmen City and invited everyone inside, saying that he had something important to announce. Adam even called Shuaying and Lin Wei, who were in an Hun organization, over. It was so lively that it was as if it was a joyous occasion. At the same time, Yun Jian was sitting at a dining table in this 5-star hotel, playing the mobile version of Snake that Qing Yu had introduced to her. The prototype of the Snake game was born in 1976. It first appeared on an arcade machine called Blockade. It was a 2-player game. Later, it was modified into a mobile version of Snake. However, mobile phones in this era could not touch the screen, so Yun Jian played with the keyboard on her phone. "How is it, Sister Jian? Is it fun?" Qing Yu asked Yun Jian after failing the challenge since Ce was not around. "It's so. Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile. "Wow, Sister Jian, this is your first time playing. How is the snake not dead even when it's so long?" Qing Yu could not help exclaiming at Yun Jian's proficiency in the game. Just as she said that, she saw Ce walking over from not far away. Qing Yu made way for him and Ce wrapped his arm around Yun Jian. His handsome face went to Yun Jian's side and asked softly, "Xiao Jian, what are you playing?" Yun Jian pressed her lips together as Ce's words made her tingle. "Sister Jian's playing Gluttonous Snake." Qing Yu interjected out of the blue and ran off with a grin. Yun Jian felt a little numb from Ce's breath beside her ear. Without looking up, she asked Ce, "Do you want to play?" "Sure." Ce did not hesitate at all. He knew that Xiao Jian was just asking, but his hand subconsciously took the phone from her. The moment he took the phone, his slender fingers deliberately held her small hand and caressed it for a full 3 minutes. Yun Jian was speechless. Was he reaching out to take the phone or to caress her hand? Just as Ce refused to let go of Yun Jian's soft hand, Xiao Yunju and the other two who were chasing each other around them stopped abruptly. Chapter 1823. At this moment, Ce's bony hand was holding onto Yun Jian's delicate hand, refusing to let go. Cough, cough, cough. Qing Yiru blushed when she heard what Xiao Yunju said. She quickly walked over to grab Xiao Yunju and dragged the 3 of them to the side. Fortunately, they were all on the same side. Qing Yu, Gun Yanji, and Luo Berry were all there, so they were not surprised by this. Yun Jian had Ce Luo had Snow Eagle, Qing Yiru had Gu Junjian, Qing Yu had Yun Yi, and Lan Su had Adam. Even Xiao Yunju was holding hands with Duan Li, looking extremely happy.
Gu Nianji, who was sitting alone in the corner, watched the scene before her. She pouted and waved at Luo Berry. "Little Strawberry, come here. Come here quickly." Luo Berry had been secretly eating pastries at the table, but when she heard Gu Nianji calling for her, she took 3 pieces of pastries from the table and walked over to Gu Nianji. Luo Berry did not know that Mo Sen, who was standing nearby in a suit, looked like he was looking at his younger brother Adam. However, he was actually sizing up Luo Berry from the corner of his eyes. Luo Berry ran towards Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji reached out and put her arm around her shoulder. She said to Luo Berry, "Little Strawberry, you're the best. They're all in pairs. Fortunately you're here. Otherwise I would be alone." "How awkward would that be?" Gu Nianji laughed out loud like a man and took 2 wine glasses. She shoved one of them into Luo Berry's arms and said to her, "Come, come. Come, come, come. To celebrate our friendship, cheers." Gu Nianji was from Yulong mainland, so she had a forthright aura. Luo Berry, on the other hand, was more delicate. She held the glass of wine and was stunned. Gu Nianji had been taking care of her when she was at Qing Yu's house, like a big sister. Luo Berry grinned at Gu Nianji as she thought about it. She took the glass of wine and clinked it with Gu Nianji's. Just as she was about to put the glass into her mouth, a very beautiful hand reached out and blocked Luo Berry's hand that was about to put the wine glass into her mouth. "She can't drink. I'll drink for her." A male voice that Luo Mei had been longing for sounded. The voice was very pleasant to the ears, and there was a hint of a cool breeze in his breath, making people feel refreshed. Ma Sen, who had been watching Adam the entire time and secretly glanced at Luo Berry from the corner of his eyes, couldn't help himself when he saw that Luo Berry was going to drink. He walked over and snatched the wine cup from Luo Berry's hand, downing all the wine in one gulp. Luo Berry was shocked by Mo Sen, who suddenly walked over. She was stunned and didn't react for a long time. "You don't have to drink for me, I can drink?" Just as Lockberry was about to explain, Mo Sen interrupted. "Drinking is bad for a girl's body. Don't drink in the future." After saying that, Mo Sen took away the wine glass in Rockberry's hand. Luo Berry was stunned. Gu Nianji, who was beside her, covered her mouth and snickered secretly behind Luo Berry's back. She thought to herself, "My little Strawberry, this is all I can do for you." Outsiders did not know that she, Gu Nianji, had a very proud title in Yulong mainland, matchmaker. At this moment, Adam suddenly wrapped his arm around Lan Su's waist in front of everyone and carefully walked over. From the looks of it, he seemed to be afraid that Lan Su would fall. Adam even announced the good news of his treat when he walked in front of everyone. He was going to be a father. That's right, Lan Su was pregnant. Out of the 3 leaders of Anhun, Shuiying had the biggest reaction. He walked over to knock Adam's head and shouted, "You're going to be a father before me. I can't accept this." Mo Sen smirked and said to Adam, "We can discuss the wedding now. Mom and Dad are gone. I'm your brother. I'll definitely help you guys make this wedding a grand one." Lin Wei acted like he did not hear anything when he heard that. He did not feel anything. Chapter 1824. Adam's announcement was indeed a pleasant surprise. Once the news was announced, everyone who was present was pleasantly surprised. Everyone's reactions differed greatly as well. Looking at his 3 brothers' reactions, Shuiying was the most agitated. Adam even glanced at Shuiying smugly and said with a grin, "I can't compare to you in other aspects, but you can't beat me in this lifetime when it comes to being a father earlier than you." Among the 4 leaders of Anhun group, the most boisterous were Adam and Shuiying. Lin Wei was the most composed, followed by Mo Sr. "What's the use of being a father earlier? It's amazing to have more children. It's still too early for you to compare yourself to me." Shuiying chuckled at Adam, unwilling to admit defeat. "Then why don't we compete to see who has more children in the future? Whoever loses will go to Amazon for a year." Adam countered. "Come on. Do you think I'm scared of you?" Shuiying replied. "Young master, we've made this bet in front of you. You have to remember it in the future. No one is allowed to go back on their word." Adam turned to Ce and said confidently. Ce, whose hand was still on Yunjian's waist, smirked and glanced at Adam and Shuiying sharply. "I'll send both of you to Amazon tomorrow for a year to practice. How about that?" Adam and Shuiying declined quickly at Ce's words. "Please don't, young master. You can't do that." Yunjian had actually known about Lan Su's pregnancy since a long time ago. Lan Su could not keep it a secret and had told her long ago. Yunjian wore a small smile and pressed her lips together lightly. She did not know that Ce, who was sitting beside her, was already tempted when he heard that Adam and Lan Su were pregnant earlier than her and Xiao Jian.
Everyone enjoyed the meal and nothing unpleasant happened. It could be said to be a very peaceful dinner. Halfway through, Lan Su suddenly called Yun Jian outside and gave Yun Jian an envelope. He said to Yun Jian with some shame, "Yun Jian, the address of the martial arts family is in this letter. I may not be able to accompany you to collect the letter. I just had a baby and the doctor said that the first 3 months of pregnancy is not stable, so I know. Give birth to the child peacefully. Whether it's the matters of the Yulong mainland or the matters here, you don't have to care about them until the child is born." Yun Jian smiled and said to Lan Su. She, Lan Su, was originally the sorcerer god's #1 protector. Whether or not she could get married was up to the sorcerer god. Lan Su was very touched by Yun Jian's words. Just as Yun Jian finished her touching words, Yun Jian opened her mouth again. "But after you give birth, you have to continue to work hard for me. At the very least, you have to earn a few billion back for me." This sentence sounded like she was using Lan Su, but Lan Su knew that Yun Jian meant that she, Yun Jian, would not give up on her even if she rested for a year. Lan Su was even more touched now. "Alright, you can go in first," Yun Jian said to Lan Su. Lan Su heard this and returned to the dining table. Yun Jian held the envelope in her hand. Just as she stuffed the envelope into her trouser pocket, her phone beeped with a message notification. Beep. Yun Jian opened the phone and clicked on the message. As soon as the message was opened, Yu Shaolua's message immediately popped up on the screen. "On November 15th, you will depart for the hunting school on time. Come to Min City Military Academy and meet up with the other 2 comrades. At that time we will send you to the hunting school. You will stay in the hunting school for a year. You will stay at home for the next few days to prepare everything and wait for departure." On November 15th, Siyi's birthday was on November 11th, which meant that she could accompany him at the Inhun organization for 4 days. Chapter 1825. Of course, before Siyi's birthday and before heading to the hunting school, Yun Jian had something else she had to attend to. She had to head to the martial arts family and retrieve the envelope that her mentor had left in the family. The envelope contained a detailed way to contact her mentor. After dinner and returning home, Siyi tugged Yun Jian's hand and led her into the house. If one were to ask why Siyi was pulling Yun Jian into the house, there was no need to ask. It was to make a baby. Once they entered the house, Siyi pushed Yun Jian against the door, using his tall and lean frame to press against her and speak to Yun Jian in a numbing tone. "Xiao Jian." Siyi's action sent a shiver down Yun Jian's spine. Pressing her lips together, she was about to speak when Siyi stopped her. His thick breath choked her. The faint, pleasant scent made Yun Jian wrap her arms around his neck and stand on her tiptoes to deliver a kiss. The kiss lasted for more than 10 minutes. "Xiao Jian," Siyi murmured softly by Yun Jian's ear. The sound numbed Yun Jian so much that she slumped against him. While Yun Jian did not know what Siyi meant, just as Siyi was about to unbutton Yun Jian's shirt, and kissed her passionately. Suddenly pressed his palm down. By letting her go, he meant that if she did not button his shirt when he kissed her, he would keep kissing her like he bent down beside her ear. "No, I'm scared. Can we wait a little longer?" Yun Jian's eyes darted around as she found a random reason to tell Siyi. Siyi did not do anything else at that, but Yun Jian could tell that he was disappointed. Yun Jian felt guilty. She wanted to do it with him too, cough. But when she remembered that his birthday was coming up, "Xiao Jian, you guys are walking so fast. Mom can't catch up to you." Qin Yuru's voice came from downstairs. Yun Jian quickly tidied herself up. Seeing that Siyi did not move, she reached out to fasten a few buttons on Siyi's chest. Feeling her small hands pressing on his chest, struggling to button it up, Siyi grabbed her hands and bent down, his handsome face meeting her pretty and delicate face as he said, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Xiao Jian, do you know how alluring you are right now?" Siyi's words made Yun Jian blush. Other than him, there was no one else in this world who could make her, slaying God, the top secret agent in the international rankings, reveal such a girlish expression. "Do it yourself." Yun Jian gave up on helping Siyi with the buttons and walked to the side. Siyi could not help smirking when he saw Yun Jian's behavior from behind. Was his Xiao Jian shy now? Siyi strode forward and pulled Yun Jian into his arms, pressing Yun Jian against the door with her in his arms before lowering his head to murmur softly in her ear. "Xiao Jian is the one who undid the buttons. She has to do it back. I'll let you go when she does it." Yun Jian was bewildered by Siyi's words. "Let her go."
Chapter 1826. Qin Yiru had rushed over because Xiao Yunju's mother had returned from recuperation overseas and was now staying at Gu Yunjian's house. The villa Ce bought was only a few minutes' walk away from Gu Yunjian's house, so Qin Yiru had hurried over to tell Yunjian about it. After all, it was Yunjian who brought Xiao Yunju back then. Qin Yiru knocked on the door twice and could not help muttering, "Where did Xiao Jian and Ai go? The house is locked, they should be inside." Inside the house, the heavy atmosphere was still swirling in the air. Ce had pinned Yunjian against the door and placed a slender hand on the back of Yunjian's head to prevent it from hurting when it was knocked against the door. Ce, who felt shameless, kissed her with his lips, looking like he would not let go until she buttoned his shirt. Worse still, Qin Yiru was still outside the house. Yunjian's mouth was gagged by Ce, but she could only grope her way to Ce's chest. Yunjian could push Ce away with brute force and he would not retaliate, but she did not want him to be hurt, so she could only button Ce's shirt with a blush on her face from Qin Yiru, who was outside the door. Yunjian had only buttoned his shirt for Ce just now. Since she was kissed by Ce, she could not see where her hand was going. Perhaps it was because Ce was gripping her mouth, she could not find the right spot with her outstretched hand. As slaying god, she could slit the throat with a single slash, and her hacking skills were the best in the world. As the goddess of sorcerer, she had ruled Yulong mainland for thousands of years and had once slain the gods of Deity continent. She was regarded as an object of reverence and worship by the world. However, as his woman she was at a loss. Yunjian had only wanted to reach for the bottom button of his white shirt, but her head was held steady, so she could only grope blindly. Mama Qin, Jejia and Si Gij must be in the house. Xiao Zhu told me to tell you. Duan Li's sharp voice came from the staircase outside the house. Yunjian and Ce, who were in the house, heard it loud and clear. Duan Li's voice sounded particularly frightening. Her hand slipped from the bottom of Ce's shirt as if she was caught doing something naughty, and her right hand accidentally touched something indescribable. It was scalding and warm. Unable to react in time, Yunjian clenched her fists a few times. What was it? Soft and soft? Hard and hard? So big that she could not wrap her hand around it? Was it a gun he was hiding on him? Yunjian blinked. She could clearly feel the change in Ce's expression. As she thought about it, Ce suddenly stopped kissing her and grabbed her hand that was under him. Panting, he went to Yunjian's ear and whispered to Yunjian in a volume that only the two of them could hear. "Xiao Jian, are you playing with fire?" She actually held his. If Qin Yiru and Duan Li, who were standing outside the door, were not here, he would have tossed her onto the bed right now. It was only then that Yunjian realized what she was grabbing and blushed. Yunjian was about to speak softly. Ce suddenly went to her ear and bit it softly, his warm breath blowing against her ear or neck. Yunjian shuddered. Outside the house, Qin Yiru waited for a while, but no one came out. Her first reaction was that something had happened to Xiao Jian and Ai. Qin Yiru quickly ran to get the spare key. Just as she was about to open the door, she saw Yunjian walked out of the room drowsily and glanced at Qin Yiru, asking, "Mom, we just fell asleep. Is there anything you need?" "I thought something happened to you guys in the house. Xiao Zhu's mother is back. She's over there now. Do you want to go and take a look?" Qin Yiru breathed a sigh of relief. There were news reports about family members staying silent in their own bedrooms, only to find a corpse in front of them the next day when they opened the door. Death by electrocution, suffocation, and so on. It was inevitable that Qin Yiru was worried. "I'll go take a look." Yunjian's cheeks were as red as a monkey's butt. Pretending that Ce was asleep, she walked out of the house and closed the door, not letting Ce out. She didn't even dare to imagine what had happened just now. Chapter 1827. Xiao Yunju's biological mother in this life was called Yun Hailan. Yun Hailan was stabbed in the stomach by Brother Niu, who was collecting protection fees. Yun Hailan almost died back then and was sent abroad by Yunjian. She had been recuperating in the hospital for close to a year and was finally back now. Like Qin Yiru, Yun Hailan was a woman with a hard life, so when she saw her, she felt like she was seeing herself and was very courteous. When Yunjian went to Gu Yunjian's house and saw Yun Hailan nearly knelt to Yunjian. If it were not for Yunjian back then, she would probably have died because she did not have the money to get her injuries treated. How could she have fully recovered today? In the end, it was Qin Yiru who stopped Yun Hailan, who was about to kneel. Xiao Zhu is an obedient and sensible child. We haven't spent much time together, but we're like a family. You're Xiao Zhu's mother. We're a family from now on. I've heard about your family background from Xiao Jian. Why don't you stay in Longmen City and keep me company from now on?
We've been with Xiao Zhu for a year, we can't bear to let him go. You stay. The place I work at is hiring. You can come to work with me and we can take care of each other. Don't leave. Qin Yuru stopped Yun Hailan, who was about to kneel before her, and blurted out everything she wanted to say. Sometimes, things that could be solved with just a few words had to be made like a parting of life and death. If Qin Yuru had not said those words, Yun Hailan would have left with Xiao Yunju. After all, she was embarrassed to stay here. However, what Qin Yuru said made Yun Hailan waver. Longmen City's economy was more developed than Yun Hailan's hometown. The security here was much better, so there was no need to collect protection fees. Therefore, Yun Hailan thanked Yun Jian and Qin Yuru a few times and was just short of kowtowing. In the end, she stayed with Xiao Yunju. After that, Yun Jian wasn't worried anymore. At first, he was worried that Yun Hailan would insist on taking Xiao Yunju away. But from the looks of it, Xiao Yunju wouldn't go with Yun Hailan. Yun Jian was relieved. After Adam announced the good news, Mo Sen, as the older brother, began to arrange Adam and Lan Su's wedding date. Lin Wei returned to an Hun organization while Shuiying brought Si Luo back to an Hun organization to have a baby. His bet with Adam was still there. Everything seemed to have gone back to square one. Si had returned to an Hun, and this time, it was Yun Jian who chased him back to an Hun. When everything was settled, Yun Jian put on her shoulder bag, which contained the butterfly knife given to her by Mu Ying, as well as the things she usually carried, and set off for the martial arts family. The letter Lan Su gave her contained the detailed address of this martial arts family. This martial arts family was different from other martial arts families. It was located in a small ravine in a very poor mountainous area. It would take more than 3 hours to get from the city to the county in the mountainous area and then to the nearest town. After that, it would take 1 or 2 hours to reach the destination on foot. The nearest town to the destination was called Yunling Town. It was a very fairy-like name. Yun Jian's destination was a place called Yunling Mountain. The martial arts family was built on Yunling Mountain. The construction of this martial arts family was similar to a large temple, but it wasn't a place to burn incense and pray. When Yun Jian arrived at Yunling Town, she was carrying her shoulder bag. Just as she asked the boss of a shop for the location of Yunling Mountain, the boss asked her in surprise, "You're going to Yunling Mountain too? You're going to the martial arts family, the Huang family, to learn martial arts, right?" Yun Jian nodded. Naturally, she wouldn't reveal her intentions. Haha, the Huang family's martial arts are famous. Many people have come to the mountain recently to learn martial arts. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.